Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, the Saturday edition. If you see a link down below, you can actually join the Zoom and become part of the conversation. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. If you're an attendee and you want to be part of this little group together that we're all talking, you think you might be able to contribute to that, let us know, and we will do it. For some reason, I'm off today. I got the new mic. I got the whole setup here. So anyway, if you do, just all you got to do is get here early until 6:40. We'll bring you in, and at 6:42 we start the mic check. Once we start the mic check, we've closed the panel. Now we will open it for educators later today, anyway, so we want to make sure that you get in earlier to do that. All right, I'm just going to keep moving. For some reason, this morning's been a little off. So anyway, a quick reminder that at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk a little bit about, right before we go into education, we're going to talk about Mike's list that Mike Andrews had put together, and Roscoe is going to give us a little coverage of that. So stay tuned for that at about 7:55 as we bring the educators in. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So make sure to stay through the end of the hour there so that we can talk through that. We're pretty excited about that. And we will now go ahead and move on to the questions. What do we have? I have a question, actually. I always like to, every once in a while, I have one. So what is the deal with input one on the ATEM? Do we know what the deal is with that? Like why it's funky? Go ahead, Victor, and then Roscoe.
My understanding is that it was designed like for gamers who want to use it as a pass-through, not just simply as an input. There is an option in the menu where you can route it directly out so there's no lag. So that's my understanding why it was used that way, and that may be why sometimes it can be funky.
And because it seems like it drops out, like it's not a stable input.
I used to.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
The HDMI input or the audio input?
HDMI.
The HDMI.
Yeah, I haven't had any dropouts with it. Ran 28 hours straight with no dropouts seen, most of it recorded. So, and it stays in sync and everything else, but I wasn't in the gaming mode. So, but yeah, it's there for a low latency for gamers, so they can run right out to a monitor.
And you might want to make sure you're on the latest version of the software too. They fix some stuff.
Oh God, Mickey.
Yeah, aside from what Victor mentioned, that it's a low latency, it could be used as a low latency pass through going to the HDMI output of the ATEM. By default, the ATEM gets its frame rate setting from input one automatically. You could change it in the settings for the ATEM, but by default, it gets it from input one.
Got it. TJ?
I'm on input one right now. Been on input one with my main camera ever since I got the ATEM. Never.
And you're not in gaming mode.
No, I think I'm set to 30 frames per second.
The only reason I say that is anytime someone says they had a problem with the ATEM switcher, like, oh, I had a problem with the signal. I'm like, were you in input one? like that's my first question. I'm like, because if there's something wrong with the video signal, it's going to be input one. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's also an ability to do color space conversion. So that's what the lower latency is there's no color space conversion going on that input. So it defeats that lag that gamers would not enjoy if they were trying to, shoot the head off their dad. Like I get killed by my son when I try to play with him. But yeah, input one, I would suggest not using as your first one as the go-to. I would go to two first and then switch back to one after you ensure that everything's nice and normal, because yeah, I've had issues on one as well. And that's a troubleshooting measure, is just go to two and then back it back to one if that's what you prefer for your first input.
Do you get your head shut off a lot by your children?
Yeah, I've learned. It's a trap. They just smoke you. Play.
We play what is it? Cricket Through the Ages on Apple TV, I think is the one that has become our family's little. It's pretty fun. All right, first question.
Okay, let's dive into this. Ray Franklin in Mount Dora, Florida asks, using Companion for ATEM Mini Pro, how do I add functions, for example, hotkeys, on a second monitor, a second computer?
Second computer. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There's a third-party app. It's actually on GitHub. It's called Vicreo, Vicreo. You want to download that on the host computer, and it creates a listener, and it opens up a port to listen for the hotkeys. Then you go into Companion. I don't have it up, so I can't show you. You go into Companion, and in the drop-down list of devices to attach to, you'll see Vicreo. As long as you're on the latest version of Companion, you'll see that. And then you just have to give it the IP address, and then you create buttons using that Vicreo hotkey.
Perfect. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Tim Erskine in Cupertino. Tim asks, I work in public access station in Mountain View, California, and we're trying to produce shows using Zoom that would be a good piece of gear, or what would be a good piece of gear or software to be able to bring in graphics and roll-ins in real time. Note, we're in the middle of a new studio build and do not have a switcher set up yet.
My go-to for that, when I do one of the 3 or 4 of those. Most of ours have a lot of hardware that we do with Zoom, but for the non-hardware ones, my go-to is Memo Live on a Mac. You can do a lot of things. You can use vMix on a PC. OBS will do it. Wirecast, you can do those. I find that the lowest latency, tightest connection between the virtual camera and Zoom on the Mac with the least amount of trouble is Memo. It has a couple things that I don't like about it. I can't set my in and out points on video, so I have to know what I'm going to actually do. Can't scrub video, which drives me a little crazy. But knowing if I'm doing a show and I know what I'm going to plug into, and I have these stills, I might have a playlist that happens before the show. I've got movies that I want to play out. I've got lower thirds that I want to, put in underneath that. If I have a video, if I want to put up some kind of bug or whatever, I can't do that, of course, over top of the Zoom. But as far as inserting into Zoom, again, we do 4 or 5 events a week that are heavy duty, 1 Zoom call per person goes into Constellation and gets all, mixed together with CL5s. And it's a big production. But when we get asked to do one where we're doing what we just call straight Zoom event support or webinar support, we use Memo Live into that, and it works well. That's our kind of go-to. I've experimented with all of them. They're all a little clunky, but we found that one was the one that was most predictable across that. Anybody use anything else to insert stuff into it? They all can do it. I found that vMix was too heavy for what we were doing. Like, it was just too much stuff, for a simple project. And the other ones were just a little clunky. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The only thing is, are you trying to do the pre-roll and stuff like that in Zoom, or you want to get it to the post? Like, are you going through YouTube or something like that?
No, when I'm doing webinar support, we do other things. As soon as we say it, they say other than this show that we do together, when someone says they want to go to YouTube, we immediately are using Zoom as a source, and then all the other stuff happens in a switcher layout and everything else.
I was talking about the question. Yeah.
Oh, if they're trying to, but it says they want to bring in graphics using Zoom.
Because what I normally would do is if it's in post production, if it's post, then what you do is you create 2 separate windows, one for the guest, one for the host, and then you can do a screen scrape and into like an OBS or a Wirecast or a vMix, and then put in the lower thirds there. Now, if you want to do the opposite, where each window has a graphic, you won't be able to do that at the source. They'll have to have their own lower third put in, so they'll have to get like an OBS to do that.
And the problem you get into with screen scrapes is just the lower resolution. You know what I mean? Like you're and you're going to get screen scrapes at lower resolution, but once you add more people to Zoom, it becomes, the outputs become kind of low res. So yeah, Memo Live is what we use to insert into Zoom. But to Jeffrey's point, if you're trying to make a show that you're going to export out, that you're going to use Zoom as the source, that's going to be a little different. And again, I think that Zoom needs a broadcast team. Like they have a event team, they have a webinar team and everything, but they need someone who's like paying attention to broadcast, because what they really, again, and we've talked about this before, they really need an edit mode, and that edit mode should be controlling what people see, but also what really need is a screen that's full screen with no graphics, that is the expression of whatever the editor is doing inside of Zoom, that preferably sees a decklink card. so it just goes out as SDI. Zoom would get a lot of users if they did that, because it's just, right now it's just painful across all the different platforms to do this. And Zoom is the closest one to making it work, because they've gotten as better than everybody else as far as overlays. There's just not a lot of junk. All the other ones have tons of junk on their screen, and Zoom has modes that let us get to just one. If they just got rid of the connection icon in rooms, we would have a clean. So what we have to do is we run it through an FS4 and scale it up by 105%, and it pops all the graphics out. Pops that last little bit of graphic out of the system, and then it's clean aperture. Anyway, next question.
Next question comes to us from Michael Vospin out of Woodstock, Georgia, and he asks, USB interface with separate mixer or USB mixer, looking at the Yamaha MG10XU.
Go ahead, Mickey.
If you have a choice and if you're comfortable with it, separate the two. Modularity is the key. If one breaks down, you don't lose two pieces of functionality. You just have to, like, if the interface goes down, you still have a mixer you can use. If the mixer goes down, you still have an interface you can use.
Anyone else? Everyone nods. Yep. Okay. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Philip Tesoro out of Brisbane, Australia. And he says, I asked this in Discord, but just in case it can help somebody not in the server, I'm going through Zoom cloud recordings and can't really make out what AVO and GVO in the recorded labels mean. I know AS is active speaker and gallery is gallery, but AVO and GVO with a lot of question marks. Note, I now realize that AS is active share.
And this is, I guess, when it's recording the ISOs or set up to record more than just the straight show. Go ahead, TJ.
Would that be active video out or gallery video out?
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah. That's my guess. I don't really use a lot of the Zoom records because they're so low resolution. And when people do any screen shares, it screws them up badly. So I usually figure I'm going to pull screen records out of them. I mean, pull a screen scrape out of it, because if I'm going to use it, because it's difficult. It'd be great if it locked to 16:9. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I had to just quickly check other recordings that I've done, and I think AVO would be active speaker plus the shared screen, and the other GVO being the gallery view with the shared screen.
There you go. Next question.
Next question, moving on to one from Peter Collins in Vail, Arizona. For a remote outdoor site with only city Wi-Fi and cell phone LTE available, which would you pick and what would you do to mitigate the downsides? For WebEx event, but interested in Zoom answers as well. Note, and then he has a link.
I would pick LTE over city Wi-Fi. I think that LTE is going to be more stable than city Wi-Fi is going to be a disaster. I mean, it's shared Wi-Fi in general, but shared by, a public entity tends to be all over the place. Like you'll test it and it'll be great, and then it'll be nothing. And it's very hard it's just hard to make that work. It's not anybody's fault. It's not like people aren't working on it. It's just that there's a lot of people, and on a Saturday morning, it might be way more than on a Friday afternoon. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I guess, of course, it would depend on what city or which city's Wi-Fi you're using. But generally speaking, a lot of city Wi-Fi is capped in terms of bandwidth at a really low speed, and also capped in terms of protocols that you can pass through that network. So I would go with LTE, and if possible, bonded LTE.
The hard part with bonded, if you're doing something like WebEx or Zoom or other things, is that the jitter becomes really important. And so in real time, in real-time communication, when we're talking, when we're doing a video, we have milliseconds to do everything. When we're streaming, if you're streaming using bonded, we use bonded all the time for streaming because we put a 5-second buffer in there. So that gives us 5 seconds for all those packets to all get back. But when the jitter is the instability of the system, and that adds to each other. So, you already have high jitter with cell, and you start adding those jitters together, because it has to, in that instability, it has to build a box that's big enough for all of those jitters to live inside of, and they're all in different places. So, so you end up with a really unstable system, and so you'll end up, bonded cellular tends to not be a great solution for real-time communication. Now go ahead, Jeffrey.
Wouldn't having a antenna booster be a advantage with the LTE, especially in a park or a forest?
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely an antenna booster will do much more for you than bonded. Like in that case, because you're still a single connection, and you're still going to have a high jitter because it's LTE, but you're not going to have, it gets abnormally high when you start to bond all the cellular connections together. So next question. Go ahead, TJ.
Just wondering if one of those little I can't think of the name of the box now that you get that is like your LTE hotspot.
MiFi?
Yes, thank you. If that would be a better solution than trying to do your phone.
It's not really much different, So it's, you're the cellular connection. Some of there are higher quality ones that are definitely better than your phone. So there are some, really beefy boxes that we've gotten with fins that come out the back, and I can't think of the name of the company right now, but we put those will have get as much cellular as you can get out of a connection. But those are, so that would be one of the things that you can do, is get a more beefy box that'll do that. But you definitely want to stick with one connection. And then the other thing I would suggest is go there with a couple different phones to the location that you're doing it at. So you and your friends, or I have a couple phones, so I have AT&T and Verizon, for instance. See which one does better, because it really depends on the location and who has the best cell sites. In general, if you're going to guess blindly, it will be Verizon. Verizon will almost always have a better connection than AT&T. This has to do with the nature of how their network works. And so at the same number of access points, Verizon will have a better connection. So if you're going to guess, it's Verizon. If you're going to, but if you have a chance to go there with AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, go with those three in the United States, and see which ones are getting the best connection as you walk around. And that's a better way to kind of figure that out. Next question.
Lawrence from here in the panel asks, I read on Discord that sharing content from second camera with optimized share for video clip gives you consistent 1080p 30 on business accounts and 720p 30 on free accounts. Is anybody using this method to increase quality?
I didn't know that it would get that. Let's hold on. Let's see if we can try this. Let me see if I can find a video that's okay. Hold on. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, so I read this on Discord and I was fascinated by that. And I did a test, just put on Zoom with my own recording, and it seems to make a difference. So I'm wondering now if that would be a preferred way to share my ATEM output instead of just going over the video, or a regular screen share. Do that. I'm not sure.
I don't know if I have the right one, but I'm going to optimize this just out of curiosity. Let's see what we get with this. I'm going to optimize screen share for video clip. Go to QuickTime. How's that playing?
Smooth.
Is it smooth?
Seems smooth.
Yeah, it's smooth.
Oh.
Better than the last time we saw this.
Resolution isn't great, but it does seem smooth. Yeah.
What resolution are you seeing in the in your? So still softening it up.
Yeah, not great.
So you're getting,
I'm getting 1120 by 630, a strange resolution at 30 frames per second. Oh, now it's 1280 by 720. Interesting.
that's me playing with the Smithsonian. Has all these models on their site for free. That was the lunar, obviously, the pod, and that model you can download for free and then convert it to USDZ and throw it into. That was in motion. Just doing a little I was just doing like, hey, does it work? Go ahead.
Are we on
Kai.
a Zoom business account?
We're not.
Okay.
We're on a Zoom business account, just not on a 1080p account, right?
I'm not on. I have a business account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have lots of business accounts. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I have. So this is a business account. I've got like 16 Zoom rooms and 10 business accounts. So
I'm gonna
think
try. Sorry, I'm gonna try the same thing. But did you hit in advanced? You went to content from second camera?
No. Oh no, I didn't do that.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try and hit it real quick.
So content
so
from
this is-
second camera, but I have to do a second camera then. I have to do another
Yeah.
input.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I got
I
it.
wonder if it'll kick me out. Let me just try it real quick. Oh, what did it just do?
It went
I
blank.
to the wrong camera. Okay. Oh, switch camera. Let's see if I can get over to the Blackmagic. Oh, dang it. I passed it. Sorry, those are a bunch of NDI vMix inputs. There it is. So what's that looking like to you guys?
Move bob your head.
Are we getting
Bob back.
So we're 1920 by 1080, but
It's
8
choppy.
frames a second.
It's pretty choppy.
So that's without, I didn't click the optimize video playback button. Let me try that real quick. Try it one more time.
I got my stats on the screen.
Share screen, content from second camera. This time I'm going to click the little button that says optimize screen sharing for video clip and see what difference that makes. So then switch camera, 1, 2, 3, one more. Come on. Where are you?
It's like it locked on 1 for me, the color bars.
Come on, where are you? There I am. All right, so what's that? Send it out.
So the frame rate's better. Resolution is lower.
Interesting. So it's
Yeah,
not.
I'm
it's
getting
not
again
doing.
that
480,
1120 by
there.
630 at 30 frames.
Yeah, that's strange. So that's a 1920 by 1080 input. So it's not working well in webinar. I know it works good in meeting, but in webinar, I don't think it's pushing out the full res. But it'd be nice for a second hour for
So-
we're on one person.
But
Actually-
Chad said he's getting 1080p. How many? So what are people getting in? Did people see a pretty good image there in? If you're in Makana, let us know in the chat.
I was getting 720.
Yeah, I was getting 1287.
Well, we don't count because we're panelists.
Yeah, I
We-
wonder what it looks like as far as the mouth delay. If we were to do like a second hour and do like Peter,
Yeah.
somebody like that, where we give them second camera and try to push it out 1080.
I'm wondering if it's also
You
a
definitely-
monitor on the other end. So
In the panel, you definitely, for the panelists at least, you definitely look better in your standard video than you did on your second camera optimizing for video. But
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know. I don't know how it looked for. Yeah. And yeah, we were getting 1080p. Peter Collins said he was getting 1080p from but it was low. Yeah, try it again. Try it again one more time. So go with optimize, advanced.
Okay, share screen. I'm going to advanced. I'm going to content from second camera, optimize screen sharing for video clip and share computer sounder checked. I'm going to hit share and then I'm going to hit switch camera. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that one it? 5. Come on, where are you? 6. Geez, 7 inputs. Come on, where am I? In here somewhere. Here I am. And let me see if I can push something cleaner than me. Let's see.
Okay, so now before you change anything, just folks that are in let us know what you're getting. Whoa.
That's just some output from Luma Touch. Is that?
for me, it went down to 720, 15 frames a second.
currently 1280.
720, but 30 frames, but it's 720.
Well, that swish pan would be one of the hardest things to compress in the world.
Yeah, and I'm mostly interested in what. Yeah, it looks like possibly that our attendees are getting 1280 by 720, which I think is a higher resolution than what they're normally getting.
So yeah, the attendees will definitely see the higher resolution because it's a screen share instead.
But they're also getting frame rate.
Now.
They're getting 29. No, you're definitely not. No, you're not even close.
Yeah. So there we go. That kind of answers that.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop.
So it's not quite there, but it's I'm sure it has a good utility there somewhere. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Thank you for testing. I'm glad it turned out this way. But somebody said in the information I found, it's not working in a webinar. He says if in a webinar it will go back down unless you have the forced options set, which I don't understand what that means. So anyways, just give it out there. But thank you for testing.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Osmo.
We joked about Zoom Room as a service. Guy, have you had more thoughts on that?
I'm still trying to make it make sense because I would love to do it to where it doesn't violate any kind of terms of service. I'm thinking about like a Zoom club or an office hours club where it's not like, I don't know. I don't know lawyers speak to be able to figure out where I cross the line of saying, hey, you want 1080p? Come onto my account and you get 3 Zoom rooms, and those Zoom rooms have the ability to lift other people's meetings up to 1280, and you get free meters, and you can just invite the room and you'll have Mickey meters. Would be
I don't
cool.
see how that. Is there anything in the terms of service that would keep you from doing that?
I haven't dug in there enough. I'm just afraid. I don't want to blow up my account because I like my account. So I'm thinking about opening up a second one.
It's not in the TOS yet, but now that you've said it, it will be next week.
Of course, the one that I want is that it has been exposed to me that there is a button that I don't have that says enabled 1080p for all attendees.
Webinar attendees. That's the holy grail.
Yeah, all
right
webinar
there.
attendees. Yeah, so only very, very special people have that. I'm not special enough. So anyway, all right. Next question.
All right, we're moving on to James Babbitt from San Diego here. Asks, in your experience using Blackmagic 6K, what is the battery life, and does 6K work well in low light?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, okay. First of all, I'm upset because I haven't been able to go out and shoot because I'm pretty strictly observing stay-at-home protocols. And it drives me nuts that I haven't been able to go out into the field and test my 6K. So I don't know the beginning part of it. I do know the second part of it, which is works well in low light. Up until 3 or 4, maybe 6 years ago, I would have said it's fine in low light. But ever since the Sony A-series thing, low light is a whole different beast now. And so I would say, no, it's not particularly strong in low light because the new cameras like the Sony A-series are insanely good in low light.
Yeah, I would say it's average. Average in low light, not particularly, not bad, but not. It's not like a low light camera. There's, and so, yeah, so that'd be my opinion. With that, it is a.
The meter has been reset on low light.
As far as so it's what was the other question? It was what was the
battery life?
Terrible.
Oh, battery life. Yeah, so you can't do real production. It's nice to have. You put these little Canon batteries in. They're nice to have, and if you carry a couple in your pocket, they last about. If you're shooting RAW, the other thing you have to know is if you're shooting RAW, you have to use the actual Canon ones. You cannot use the, some other ones. They don't. The draw is so high that, and it'll suck them up in 15 or 20 minutes. It's basically, it'll just, that's about a Canon one. A non-Canon battery will last 30 seconds if you set it to RAW. If you're setting it to ProRes, it'll last a bit longer. But it's a good. It's been my favorite camera to shoot with. I'm not saying it's the best camera I've ever shot with, but it's my favorite camera to shoot with. The interface is at a different level than all the other cameras I've shot with. I mean, it's just that you just tap on things that you need and you just get what you want, and the pictures are beautiful, and and there's everything is right where I want it to be. I worry that it's a little, I worry about the screen, big screen. I'm always worried about breaking it. I put it in a cage. So mine's there, and I don't capture, I capture generally to a T5 all the time. I have an external battery, a really big one that goes into an external battery that goes into the power. So that is got a little V-lock that I can put on my tripod. So that's how I mount the battery. I have the battery mounted to a tripod that powers it. That'll last for hours. It's a big battery, and I'll try to find the link for it while someone else talks. But go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I use one of the external batteries too. It's called the Core SWX Power Base V-mount battery, and it lasts a long time. I'll put a link. It's expensive. It's a $240, but it does last a really long time with a 4K anyways.
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Did you go half cage or full cage?
Full cage. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't have it in there. I have a small, I think the small rig, and it goes all the way around. And I do that partially to protect the camera. It's not just there, but it's a.
Yeah, but it messes up the ergonomics for smaller hands, getting around that right side of the camera.
Yeah, and I don't have smaller hands. I have pretty big.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of tripod work.
I have female students with small hands, so I went. Okay.
Yeah. No, but that anyway. That's how I have it. Definitely how I have it set up. Did someone else have a comment there? Yeah. So you definitely want external power. Like a big battery if you're going to take it out and do shoots, or you're going to have a slew of little ones and know that you're going to stop pretty often to swap the battery out. I mean, I've definitely taken it out. I was trying to find some footage for you real quickly, but I don't have it right in front of me. But it's let's see if I can. Just trying to.
While Alex is looking, I will note that we're down to just a couple of questions. So if you have something burning and you want to pop in for today, it's a great time to get your questions handled.
This is, let's see if I can, I'm just trying to,
while you're looking, I have a question about what do you use for a power source if you're going to gimbal mount it? Do you use an onboard battery, use an external?
It's got a little power tap in, so you can use anything that you can string out to an external power supply. So it has a power.
That, but on a gimbal, a lot of time the wires get in the way, and you got to figure out where to mount the battery, and you can put it on your belt. You can put it on your back.
I will say they're a little heavier and bigger than a lot of
supplies into them to power your camera separately. Mine does anyway.
Yeah, if you go for a bigger gimbal like a movie or a what's a DJI one, the Ronin. Yeah, those have power outlets at the right spots for you to get power from the Ronin's battery pack.
And if you've just seen pictures of the camera, it can look like a standard DSLR. It is actually physically bigger than you might expect when it shows up. I was surprised at how beefy the actual body is. So it is going to be in the top end of gimbals and mounts and things like that. You don't want to use the little inexpensive flywheel stuff.
This was see, I don't know if this is just handheld. I'll play it. It won't play back very well, I don't think, but we'll let's see here. So this is in Dharmasala. This was my Paratha's getting made, but this is all handheld with the camera, and it was actually pretty dark when I was taking it. Skip through, and I was just kind of amazed by it's probably not going back at a good frame rate there, but I was kind of amazed at the quality of the camera. And I had just gotten the camera relatively recently, in that process. But this is just me kind of just grabbing onto it and throwing it in.
What ISO are you shooting at? Do you have any idea?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't have it in front of me, but it was, if I remember, I think it was 800.
Is this log C or we're looking at here? Or...
This was, I don't think this is log. I think I just grabbed it. But it was pretty. I'd have to go back and look at what I had there. But I shoot most shoot most stuff in log. So it very well could be. But that was one of the few ones. I've shot some stuff in BRAW, which obviously is just raw. That one was actually shot in Apple ProRes, so I had a plan to throw it up quickly on the internet. Never did. It just sat there as a clip. That's what happens. Anyway, if you have other questions, go ahead and put them in now. But go ahead, Bill. What's the next question?
Okay, that one's answered. So the next question comes from Kevin Murphy in Palm Desert, California. What are some common pain points in popular graphics playout systems? I'm thinking of Casper CG and its clients, but would love to hear about more. Note I'm new to Casper CG, but it looks promising, trying not to hit myself in the face with a rake on the ground everyone knows about.
I think that the only thing there is that Casper is it still Flash based, or do they update it? Like Casper for a long time, they picked Flash, which was a really good idea because there was lots of Flash designers. But if I remember correctly, Casper CG is still flat. You need Flash developers. So that's the only question I have is whether it's still a Flash based solution. Casper is inexpensive. It was developed, if I remember correctly, I think it was developed by or paid for by the Swedish government or something like that to basically create a good playback system to go out there. But I know people that love Casper. Things that are free, I tend not to put into my pipeline because I'm always afraid that they won't get updated. It's a funny thing. Like there's a lot of people, there's some people that are really into open source stuff and there's some people that aren't. And I'm definitely I want to pay for it because I want to know that somebody's making money on it so that somebody has an incentive to fix it and update it and improve it and so on and so forth. And so if I don't understand where that model is for a free piece of software or hardware or a free piece of software, I won't buy it. I won't put it into a production pipeline because I'm just afraid that at some point I won't be able to use it. And so I don't want it to be too expensive. I can't pay for everything, but I also don't want it to be free because I feel like the incentive to keep moving it forward is lower. But so that's my only thing about Casper. The pain points really are just being able to, how do you grab dynamic data when you're thinking about graphics? How do you go out and grab dynamic data and integrate it with your graphics package? That's the hardest thing to do. Typically on a graphics package, that's the scores, that's the tickers, the social media, those types of things are the things you want to pull into your graphics package, and a lot of the tools will do it. But generally, it takes more work when they're less expensive. It takes more work. So like BizRT will do it in 3D. There's Unreal Engine graphics packages that are starting to come out that are less expensive. There's ROS expressions. There is obviously Chiron. These are all really expensive ones. And then you get into like Softron has the on the air CG. There's the blue is it Bluefish or Bluefin titler, and those ones just are more limited in what they can do. But for most of what we all do, they would be fine. Like you don't need a BizRT.
Titler, Alex.
New Blue Titler, yeah, that's it. I don't know why I thought it was Bluefin. There's a graphics card that is like a Bluefin or Bluefish. New Blue Titler, and so those will all do those things. They take a little bit of more work, but so do the other ones. I mean, the thing we always have to explain when someone says, "Oh, I want a BizRT package," is the BizRT hardware is only $1,400 a day to rent, but the package costs $50,000. to have someone develop the package for you starts at about $50,000 of labor to get it built. Now, once it's built, it's amazing. Things come in, and it's what you see like on NFL. The NFL graphics down below; those are all BizRT, or most of them are. And so it's really powerful, but it's expensive to develop, expensive to do those things. We don't use any of those. I mean, I'm not I don't do sports. And if I don't do sports, I find that a lot of real-time graphics is annoying. I want it to be, I'm more interested in the data, and I want super sources and I want to know where things are, but having things all flashy and running around, and we do sweepers and stuff like that, but I don't need it to get much further than that. So I'm not probably the best person there. Anyone else I'm vamping because no one else is raising their hand. All right, we'll just keep going. Next question.
Okay. Beju from the panel is asking the panel, if you can't use Zoom or if it stops working because of a Zoom storm or something, what's the next best alternative?
it's a long drop after Zoom. Like it's like, you know, like it's like, I mean, I'd say probably Meet begrudgingly. Meet is probably for a call. If you're going to use it for something you're going to stream, you're kind of screwed, because Zoom is the only one that gives you anything close to clean apertures and everything else to work with it. I find that like WebEx and BlueJeans are just goofy. I can't figure out, and even with Hangouts, I can't figure out what the thought process is on who's being shown in my strip and who's not being shown. You hear voices, but you don't see them, but you know that they're there, and it's very stressful. You know, I find it to be. I do find one interesting thing. I'm on a lot of BlueJeans calls. BlueJeans uses they use like surround sound for the voices, so it puts people in different places. If you've got a newer Mac, you know, like my 2020 laptop will put people's voices in different places in space. It's using Dolby Voice or whatever, and it's a fascinating. It's a little disconcerting when you start using it, but it's interesting. But that's the only redeeming quality of that platform, is where it puts the voices. Outside of that, it's just annoying. The one thing I will say, by the way, this might approach for some of you, playback of video in BlueJeans is way better than everything else. And the reason for it, though, is it takes time. So if you get up there early, if you want to present videos for review, to talk about, for a presentation, you have to upload them to their server, and it takes a while to get them all up there. But and then it takes a while to do whatever they're going to do. But when you play it back, it's every frame, it's high quality. So if you're doing a presentation with a lot of videos that you want to play, like if I was going to do a film festival on a VC, I would do it in BlueJeans, because I know that I could play out the videos and everyone would see every frame. You know, so if I was going to do it without a bunch of other tools, I wasn't going to stream it. That's the one thing it does really well. It caches it, though, so you have to cache those videos into their cloud. But if I was, it's a pretty slick solution for that. But that's other than that, it's kind of annoying. Anybody else have an opinion? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
We were at a conference, virtual conference a few days ago, and we did a lot of stuff in Discord. Now, it really depends on how big your room is going to be, but maybe that's a good alternative right there as well.
Discord's got a lot of pluses and minuses. I mean, the pluses for Discord are that I love the fact you can just drag people between rooms. You know, like you can just drag people from one video call to another. As someone who manages that would be amazing if Zoom had it. So I just drag people in. So that is the problem with the WebRTC solution. We always look down the barrel of just like, supporting people with WebRTC when they have to go to their browser to choose their camera is something that's kind of a no-go for us. You know, we don't want to walk people through that. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I was wondering, have you ever screen scraped off FaceTime? And if so, what are the...
We used to, before they ruined it. I mean, the last version just totaled it. Like, it's just not worth it. Like the last version of FaceTime is just like the weird stuff that they put in, and people pop in, and then there are all these little bubbles, and you know, all the other things that are there. I mean, we had we never did it that much because it was never as good as Hangouts. You know, when we were doing them, it was always going to be a little funky. But you know, Apple got into this kind of design phase of it that made it, you know, pretty painful for us. So we just kind of wrote it off. We don't use FaceTime anymore. I use it for one-on-one on my phone. Someone calls and I pick it up. It's the best thing for that. Like if you have an iPhone and they have an iPhone, having a video call, FaceTime rules. I don't really think it's good for anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As a big fan of Apple, obviously, but not that. So next question.
Okay, moving on to Kevin Murphy from Palm Desert asks, I've been filming hummingbirds at 240 frames per second on my iPhone using Filmic Pro and Filmic Remote. Any recommendations for a multicam shoot app, multiple iPhones?
I don't have any. I kind of want to see the footage though.
Yeah,
that's all I got to say.
It'd be cool.
I have a whole slew of hummingbirds, and the one thing I've realized over, you know, there's like probably 12 or more hummingbirds in my backyard, and they are the meanest little. If they were bigger, they would devastate the world. Like those little guys are I saw them push a hawk off of our tree. Hawk sat down, the hummingbirds were like, "That's my tree," and they just started darting at him and telling you, "He's like, okay, I'm out of here." I've seen them push owls, hawks, and I realized I thought that they were coming up to say hi to me, but they were really coming up to scare me off because I was getting too close to their mimosa tree. I have a mimosa tree in the backyard, which is that is the food for the summer for them, and so they have no sense of humor about you getting close to that tree.
Sounds like they're toe to toe with lovebirds as the gangsters of the bird world.
Yeah, they are they're nothing to be messed with. So, but I don't know anything about how to shoot them though. I try to shoot them with my bigger cameras, but I haven't. They're really they move around a lot. There's a lot of darting. All right, next question.
Okay, Victor. From the panel here, what do folks recommend for ND filters for shooting in 4K wide open at f1.4 or f2.8?
Does anyone have any specific filter recommendations, brands? High quality ones. I haven't had, most of my stuff has been so controlled. I haven't had to deal with that too much recently. I haven't put them on. Go ahead, Victor.
Should I opt for a variable or should I go for like a 10, for that wide of an aperture?
Go ahead, Bill.
I used variable a good little bit because I spent a lot of my shooting career in Phoenix and it's very bright there. So a variable ND filter is basically two polarizers on a little circular mount thing. And you can vary the amount of light in pretty small increments that gets through the lens to the sensor. So they can be very useful if you're doing something where the light is changing particularly, because you can start a shot and if it gets a little bright because the sun is coming out from behind clouds, you can creep it down a little bit and get closer to it. But it's just a taste sort of thing. That's an active operating thing. It's not a slap a certain ND on your lens and then it's there forever.
Go ahead, I got Guy.
Yeah, it depends on how much you want to spend really, because the variables will have color shift. So as you're moving through them, you're going to get a little bit of a green or some other color tinge. And so a lot of pros just won't use them. So you want the drop in with a matte box. And then also I wouldn't shoot wide open on a lot of lenses just because they're softest at the wide open. So you want to stop down just a little bit and you can run some tests and you'll see what I mean. Or there's plenty online. The second that you start stopping down on a res chart, you can see what happens. It cleans it up. So
I mean, in my experience is generally 5.6 is about the sharpest that lens is going to be. And then everything else, it starts to fall off, in that area. I agree with you though. TJ and then Mickey.
With ND filters, a lot of them will shift your blacks to, it has to do with the infrared and ultraviolet, and it'll start shifting your blacks to purple. Vari ND is a particular brand that did best in that particular area.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Kev.
Yeah, in terms of popular brands, look at Tiffin, and also Tiffin is what I see most often, but Lee Filters is also a popular brand. Definitely, I would avoid Vari ND if you can. And yeah, in terms of what TJ said, you can get, I think they call it hot mirror NDs, wherein it not only cuts out the visible light but also the infrared light.
Just to follow on from that, don't forget you can buy filters and gels separately. So depending on what you're filming and where you are, if you're controlling light, for example, if you're using exterior daylight, ND filter, depending on which what you're shooting on the exterior of the window frame, will allow you to filter the incoming daylight and control that much more easily. And it's quite cheap, relatively speaking. But don't forget to forget it when you wrap. You want to leave it there.
If you're going to use them a lot, then a matte box starts to become pretty useful, just because you just have a lot of, if you're going to really get serious about it, definitely there's lots of stuff you can screw on, and then matte boxes give you all kinds of options, gradients and all kinds of other things that you can throw on really, really quickly and easily. So it just depends on how crazy you want to get. Next question.
Okay, moving on to George Kennedy from the panel here. Which service do you prefer, OpenDNS or Cloudflare, for a more safer browsing experience? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
We'll
sorry,
get to that one. Yeah,
that
go ahead.
jumped to me. Alex, any issues with ATEM Mini webcam out into BlueJeans? Sorry about that.
I haven't used the ATEM Mini directly to BlueJeans. I've only done the web presenter. That's what kind of like my standard. It gets into everything system. So I haven't tried it, but I will. I have lots of opportunities to try it. So I'll try that next week. So ask that question next Saturday, and I'll have a better answer. All right. Next question.
That one's answered. So we're moving into cements, and here's from India. Which service do you prefer, OpenDNS or Cloudflare, for a more safer browsing experience?
Right now, I'm experimenting a lot with OpenDNS for my kids. so that's the one I'm kind of leaning towards at the moment, but I haven't decided yet. Just trying to figure out the controls of how I want to do that. Go ahead, TJ.
Been using OpenDNS for more than a decade, I think. No problems.
Yep.
Works well.
Great. Yeah. I think it is important for kids for you to limit what I kind of looking at basically turning everything off and then turning things on as needed. That's kind of my plan. Anyway, next question.
Brett Discus in New York says, has anyone used Showflow Studio yet?
It looks really good. I haven't. It almost looks kind of like what's the? We've talked about it before, but kind of all-in-one. You don't
Studio?
have to. Not Switcher Studio. I can't think of the name of it right now. We've talked about it. It's a service.
Restream.
But not Restream.
Yeah, it looks like Restream to me.
StreamYard. StreamYard. Yeah. So it looks a little like that. Maybe a couple more features. I haven't. It kind of sits in between things that we either do it really simply or we do it more complicated. So I haven't really gotten to play with it just yet. Has anyone else tried it? We should try to do a show with that. See what it looks like. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's Jeff Keithley says they have a little ways to go just to start. But I think for people, I think there is a market for people who just want to do something ongoingly every day, or something with in-house talent or in-house staff. And I think it could be a good solution for that. Next question.
Okay, TJ Asher from the panel. Roscoe and I have been watching GPU and CPU performance with Zoom today. Zoom seems to really be avoiding GPU on the Mac and hammering CPU. Any clues as to why it's seeming to avoid GPU usage for video? I have the option checked to use hardware acceleration for video.
I don't know. It just depends on how it's processing the video. I mean, it just depends on how it's compressing the video. I mean, it's encoding and decoding the video is what's taking all the GPU or CPU, and it just depends on what it's leaning on to do that. And there's a whole slew of reasons. Sorry, there's a whole slew of reasons that it might do one or the other, but I don't know for sure.
Would it make you want to avoid older hardware though for running what we're doing?
I generally avoid older hardware for running what we're doing. I mean, if I'm doing anything complicated with a bunch of frames, and or pretty much anything. I mean, I consider for anything that I'm going to do that I care about, that it's not me just jumping on, I want an i7 or higher, CPU. Like I won't do it with an i5 or whatever. It's not. I don't think it's not something I would lean on anyway. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Guy.
Yeah, which Macs are you running? Do they have the discrete GPUs? Are they using the Intel GPUs on the motherboard?
All the ones that I use have discrete GPUs. Yeah, I'm always using discrete. Go ahead. What about you, Roscoe? Do you know when you guys were testing it? Do you know if it was a discrete GPU?
MacBook Pro 2015.
And do you know if it was set as discrete? You have that setting in.
Yeah, I don't have it set.
You might want to set that and see if it leans on it more. That's a good point that Courtney brought up. That if it may, when you give it a discrete GPU, it may say, "Oh, you've got something that I can use," and it might jump on it. So that's a good.
I think TJ pushed it there. Oh,
TJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a brand new Mac Mini with an eGPU, 64 gigs of RAM, and it's a 6-core i7, 1% GPU usage. So yeah, it's pretty much ignoring it.
It's probably just the nature. Yep. We're going to go to the next question because we're running out of time.
Okay, we're on. Tony Mobley says, what's the panel's thoughts on the new Ecamm interview beta feature?
Has anyone used it? I guess is the question. Looks like no one's done any interviews. I was thinking Victor might, but I think Victor went on to other things. Go ahead, TJ.
Victor's planning a test in about 3-4 minutes with that right now.
There we go.
That's why he's gone.
Okay. That's why he's gone. Vincent Alvarez asks, so I'm jumping in for you, Bill. Convince my boss to get a Logitech Brio. Does it work great out of the box, or will I need to tweak it? And if so, we are both working remotely. So you will want to control it. So you want software on the Mac. I'm mostly using either manual camera or webcam settings. I've kind of gone back to webcam settings just because I know it really well. I used manual camera for a while, $7 or $8 or whatever, and it'll control the camera. It controls it better. Webcam settings controls your Brio better than the Logitech software, hands down. The zoom is much smoother. The controls are much better. So the Logitech software on the Mac, at least, does not keep up with webcam settings as far as the amount of control that you have. On the PC, there's a PC software that controls it, and it's almost impossible to find. It's kind of the most craziest thing. You can't, like, we were trying to help someone find it the other day, and it's hidden deep somewhere in the Logitech, but it's very hard to find the software. Go ahead, Kev.
Ironically, that very item you're looking for, if you go into a Skype and then go into settings, through settings, audio, video, it allows you immediately into the access of those camera settings you're talking about, Alex, where you've got that proper granular control over everything.
And you get it in Skype.
Yeah. If you go to the Skype, settings, audio, video, suddenly those settings will pop up.
It's an open standard. It's an open standard. It would be great to have Zoom. I'm just saying, like, it'd be great if people could control their webcams with Zoom. Like to actually color, the color correction and everything else, to not have these other apps. It's a basic, we deal with this every day. We're dealing with people who jump in Zoom, and now I have to have them go download an app, and the zoom and framing is great. But if we were able to do white color, white balance, exposure, those types of things through Zoom, especially through the remote control camera, would be killer solution. Let me control your camera and then be able to color your camera, reframe you, everything else. We've standardized on the Brios for most of our stuff because we can at least frame people, but being able to add all the other stuff would be useful.
You can also do that with C920, by the way. Same controls will work with that camera. Right.
So, go ahead, Hasmuk.
Is that webcam settings in the App Store? Is that the one?
Yep. Webcam settings. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Now we're going to start bringing our educators in. If you're an educator, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. And also we want to talk a little bit about Mike's List. Roscoe, do you want to give people a little bit of overview?
Sure. And actually, that's so funny. I didn't copy the link to put in the chat right away. So if somebody throw that in, that'd be great. And basically, if you've been on Discord, Mike, was the collector of the links. He every day dedicated himself to collecting the chat links and posting them so that we could all benefit from. This thing moves so fast, and it's like, well, hold it, what did he say? And I've gone back there multiple times to go, oh yeah, that was a really good idea. Grab that one. Well, then Laura Seal took Mike's links and went back through all the education days and put them together in this beautiful PDF document, which is kind of like a one-stop shop that you can hand off to teachers. Well, I talked to Laura, and Guy's going to throw it up there right now, and we're going to make this an online document, and it's going to be the Michael Andrews education links. And I would love for everyone, if you could just go in, add a link, throw in a link once a week, put in, find an area that you love and just clean it up a little bit, help it make sense, that kind of stuff. And really just make it a group project and just continue Mike's work. That's kind of the way we can just say, hey, thanks, Mike, for all that you did for us, and just keep it in memory, and hopefully it'll grow. and just continue to be useful. The goal at the end is to be able to print out that PDF and email it around to people. But if we give them the online link, they can certainly go there and get the references there. So it does, does have some hyperlinking and stuff to jump around to those categories.
That's
So,
great.
yep.
Thanks, Roscoe. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
definitely check that out. And where's that link in Discord?
I'm going to put it in I'll put it in Discord. It isn't anywhere in Discord right this minute. So it'll go into the education channel in general to start with, and then we will put it where it needs to go. But yeah, it'll be all over purpose.
Thank you for working on that. Thanks to Laura for working on that as well. Of course, thank you to Mike. Let's go ahead and do the mic checks real quickly. Michael. Whoop. Nope, it's muted again.
That's okay. That's really good. Good morning from San Francisco, and I am looking like I'm coming in a little bit hot. So let's.
Hey, Mickey, I'm going to let you run with this for a second. I'm just going to run out for just a second while you do that.
And I am back on a DPA and still running through noise assist today.
Yeah, it's still coming in a bit hot there, Michael.
Still a little bit hot. All right, let me pull it back just a tad bit more. And it's been a busy week, but I'm glad to be back today. That's that.
Right, just a slight nudge down.
Slight nudge down. All right.
Yeah, we should be good. We'll move on to Emily and then Stevie afterwards. Thank you, Michael.
Good morning from Red Hook, New York. Emily here, and I missed you guys. I am on my AKG 414 going through my focus rate and some sort of other thing that my husband connected for me. Looks like I'm kind of close there. Do I need to go up or down, Mickey?
Yeah, maybe just 2 dB up.
2 dB up. Okay, so let's see if that helps any. Am I right on there now?
I think you're there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. We'll move on to Stevie and then Chris Clark afterwards.
Okay, I didn't change anything from last week, so hopefully this is going to remain the same. Won't have as long of a change as we did last time. It seemed to be a little bit on the 2625. Hopefully that's a little bit better. I just moved it up a little bit, so
split the difference on that change.
All right, let's go ahead and bring it back just a little bit more. And hopefully that is good. I was doing some recordings here this week. Good morning from Lake Katrine, New York. Hopefully you guys are all good where you are. Good.
All right. Cool. Thank you. That's a good check. Yeah, Stevie, do you mind adding your location there on in your name? All right. Thank you very much, Chris. And then Bruce Francis afterwards.
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona. A new beginning has its seed in endings past and present need, in ache of loss, in peace cut short, in shimmering opportunity, in shimmering opportunity. A rainbow signs the tempest's end, bright alphas from Omega sent, both frame our past in present tense, and give us light for here and now, and give us light for here and now.
All right, thank you. That's a good check, Bruce.
Chris, that was beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm trying to check on how does the sound look. I've got it 22, 20, 19, 18. Is that running pretty much where it should be?
Yeah, but
Okay.
what are you supposed to be coming in on that headset, or it sounds like you're coming in through a computer speaker? Sorry, computer microphone.
I'm on a headset. This is the one that my son recommended for me. I've been using it all this time. Does it sound different? Does it sound weird in some way?
It sounds like you're coming in through the. Sorry.
Through the sound. I'm hearing it on the headset.
No, but in terms of the microphone, it sounds like you're coming in through the computer mic, not the headset mic.
Oh, okay. How can I change that?
So yeah, within Zoom, on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a microphone there, and there will be an up arrow on it.
This says speaker headphone that it's coming through.
Yeah, select your above it. There should be a microphone selection.
Intel Display Audio HDM1. Is that how does that sound? Does that make a difference? I switched it to that one.
Are
Does that
you?
sound any different or anything? I
Did
have one
you?
other. I have one option called same as system. Should I try that?
No. So
The options I have are an Intel
what are the
display audio
options?
HDM1,
What are the options
and then
for
the speaker headphone, and same as system.
Bruce? I don't think. Can you
Which
hear
one
us?
should I try? I've got it on Intel display audio HDMI 1. Does that help?
So for the microphone, Bruce, what are the options?
Anybody hear me? Mickey, do you hear me?
I don't think. Oh, can you hear us, Bruce?
I switched off the microphone. You couldn't hear me. I was blithering away, but you
No,
couldn't hear me.
we could hear you, but I don't think you were hearing us.
Oh, how was that, by the way? If I was on that.
All right. So.
Can't win. I can't hear you, or you can't hear me. How about if I put in
on the selection of microphones? What are the options there?
I have 3 options: Intel display audio HDMI 1.
For the microphone, not the speaker.
I'm sorry. Okay.
There's a list. There should be a list there of microphones.
I have speaker headphone. I have same as system. I have test. No, there's a section switch to phone audio, leave computer audio.
No, for
Audio
microphones,
settings.
I think those might be selections for speakers. What are the options for microphone?
Okay, here we go. The HD Pro Cam Web C920, same as system, stereo mix, microphone, and microphone array. Minicam virtual microphone, and then minicam, and then microphone array.
I'm not familiar with what exactly those inputs are, but I think we can stick with the microphone you're currently on.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry to cause so much problem.
No worries, no problem at all.
It's my turn this week, Stevie.
Alrighty. All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, and just a quick reminder that if we don't have a lot of questions right now, so if you have questions about this, if you're trying to figure this out, definitely these are the time to ask questions about education. So distance learning, education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in those areas. So ask those questions right now. We've got a great panel that has kind of collected here to have all this. So we'd love to kind of do that. But you're running our show as the attendees. So it's going to be a long show or a short show based on your input. So if you've got questions about education, we've got things we'll vamp for a while, but just kind of noting that out. One thing that we're probably going to do is, and I have a question for the panel here and for everyone that's on there, is that probably going to go to 1 day a week rather than 2. I think we're kind of stretching this conversation out over 2 days, and we get less questions in both. And so the question for the panel is Friday or Saturday better? It seems that Saturday is better because more people are available. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Yeah, thumbs up.
I can imagine it's better for the teaching.
Yep. I figured everybody else is working. So yeah. So what we'll do is we're gonna starting next week, I'm gonna figure out what we're placing into Fridays there, but we're gonna we'll have this hour. We'll remain here on Saturdays, and then on but Fridays we'll add more things to it. We have lots of requests for things, and so we have to. So I'm trying to figure out where those things go. So anyway, so that we'll do that. So Saturday from 8 to 9 will still be education, and then on Fridays we'll be shifting that schedule. So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
The first one is, can anyone recommend a source for any examples of good online games for teaching STEM topics or research thinking at a high school or early college level? That comes from Bruce Francis.
Online STEM. Go ahead, Emily.
All right, so I don't have anything really good game-wise, but there's a guy who has a blog called Search Research, and every week he puts out a challenge, and it usually involves like a question and like many points, and then at the end of the week he solves it, but it teaches you how to search, and he explains how he got the information he was looking for. And like sometimes it's really random, and sometimes it's really like specific to like one time he was looking for a song in German in another language or something, and like the search terms he used to find it was crazy. And 2 people just put the link up, or I would have put the link up too. But you can sign up and get an email weekly to be part of his game. It doesn't get you any, like, there's no, it's just a engaging thing. And I find it fascinating. I participate in it quite a bit just because it's fun to try to see if you can figure it out first.
Alex, you're muted.
Sorry, I was sipping tea and I didn't want to sip it into my microphone. Anyway, so one thing that bounces around in our office a lot is it's not what you know, it's how well you Google. And it's a funny thing that you have to learn how Google thinks, so that you can search the terms in the way that in the order that you put them in and how you set them up and everything else. And you can find a lot, because people wonder how I figure things out really quickly. And it's not because I know it, it's because I'm really good at Googling. I'm really good at putting the search terms in. I don't bother with all the extras. I don't write, whatever. I know exactly what it's looking for. And I need these things. I put some things in quotes, like I want this, I'm looking for this string with this, with these, pieces and so on and so forth. Go ahead, Michael.
The Boolean commands are your friend.
Yeah. It's hard for me to recommend a specific set of games. The company BrainPop has a pretty good range of general STEM games, and they vary by STEM subject. They also vary in sort of depth and quality of content. I think in general with educational games, STEM is a really wide area. So if you have a specific subject, you can probably get a little bit further looking in there. The other place that I would say to look is the sort of School of Education style research projects that are students building and experimenting with games are a really good source of potentially interesting games that are probably deeper on the pedagogy side, but maybe less so on sort of the fancy graphics and sprites that they would have in the games, but could be interesting experiences. And then you kind of just have to find that balance of playing, whether you want something a little bit deeper pedagogy or a little bit more engaging. In terms of games in general, I would just caution you, if you're looking at a commercial project, to think very, very skeptically about the claims that they make about the efficacy of their games, because most of them don't hold water in terms of formal research studies, but they can still be really good experiences.
John?
Yeah, the site that I just put in Discord is from Merlot. It's a multimedia resource, and what they have is the virtual labs by Merlot. So it's not really a game, but they're actually virtual science labs that you could do things and play with and experiment. And it's game-like because you're really doing real live experiments using these virtual labs.
Stevie?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of piggybacking off of what everyone was saying here. One of the ones that I'm really into, and Emily knows this, I'm a big Minecraft person, and there are a lot of tie-ins for higher education, or not higher education, but secondary education now with online labs. They could experiment in certain places, and if you are in a space where you have a Microsoft license, it is usually a part of the package for the students, and most kids already feel comfortable there. We sandbox in that space. We do a lot of coding in that space as well. So there's a lot of room there to kind of play around and do different things that in a space that they're accustomed to already.
Yeah, go ahead, Emily. And then Ross.
Just really quickly, Stevie also does Vex, and the kids, like, they do that whole codable thing, and they actually, it's not just the remote control Vex robot challenge. They do the coding and then like have to figure out the obstacle course. And I was not big on robotics until I started working with Stevie a few years ago, and now I'm totally into it.
I'm just amazed at what kids do as part of the first project. I was in Kansas City, and their Hallmark is there, and their engineers volunteer with the local high schools. And or one of the local high schools to help the kids. I know that it sounds crazy that Hallmark has engineers, but they have engineers for those. They have an engineering team that manages all the, like, when it opens up and makes noise. There's a whole team that like figures out how do you do that at 3 cents a unit or 2 cents a unit and figure those out. So they're actually really good electrical engineers, and they work with the students, and watching what what high school students put together on their own is pretty amazing. Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, how could I forget Vex? Yeah, that's one that I use all the time. Vex Robotics is a great place, a great tool for not just the those of you guys who are in the meeting that are for the secondary. You can go all the way up to college level with it, but all the way down to elementary as well. So they have what's called the virtual world. So instead of having the student there with the robot itself, they can build this, their programming out and do challenges each, based on the software to accomplish a task. So it's really cool.
That's great. Roscoe, did you have a point? I thought I saw your hand.
No, actually no, but at Science Olympiad, I was actually looking for stuff based on Science Olympiad because they really have a lot of good stuff.
Great. Let's go to the next question.
Okay, the next question comes to us from our own Chris Clark here on the panel. Teacher morale is a fragile link in our neosystems of virtual and hybrid schooling. Any tales of positive and teacher-sensitive moves to boost or sustain teacher morale in these difficult times?
Go ahead, Stevie.
Yeah, this week has been, as you said, there's so much going on. But this week I had an opportunity to jump in with a bunch of teacher friends and kind of co-teach in some spaces. And the big things that's been happening. Number one, kids are jumping on and really getting involved. We were actually looking at our analytics this week for our district, and it was cool to see that we're getting upwards of 80-90% engagement. And one of the classes in particular that I'm thinking of. Phenomenal teacher, got to sit in with her on her class, and the kids were doing this little dance party at the end and having a good time. They were able to break out into little breakout rooms and have real deep conversation. These are fifth graders that had deep conversations and then jump back into their virtual party, and they were reminding her of what she needed to click on. So I find that now that it's becoming a little bit more of the pattern and the routine, the students are getting more engaged. The teachers are starting to figure out how to use this space, and it's not as crazy as it was maybe 2-3 months ago.
And you think,
Stevie, I'm finding, sorry to interrupt, I'm finding that same exact thing. I have a third grader downstairs, and at first, you might have heard me a few weeks ago saying that the teacher was a train wreck, and she actually heard me because the mic was open, and I got a little talking to afterwards, but she is doing fantastic now. She's doing amazing. Like, she's doing exactly what you said. She has breakout rooms going on, and she's pairing kids up, and they're getting work done together. She's popping in the breakout rooms. She's also doing a lot of screen sharing, doing these timers, telling people to look away after 20 minutes off the screen, and giving them like meditation things to do during the breaks. And it's really cool to see her fully like blossoming as a teacher. So I'm really proud of her. So to answer that question, I should also just let her know. I've been meaning to get her a ring light, so it's on my list.
You gotta go, she's doing great.
Alex, I have an operator question. I actually double clicked and made a mistake and put Chris's over and removed. Is there any way to get it back into the answer?
There's no way to get it back. You just have to read it. Yeah, that's when you double click on them. Yeah.
Right. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, we're working on it. But you can read it out.
Okay. Well, if anybody needs a reference to the actual question, let me know.
Yeah. Anyway, you read it out when Chris posted it again. So there you go.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're working on being able to fix that, undo it, but we don't have that in the system yet.
It's
go ahead,
good for
Emily.
my morale to be able to repost something.
Go ahead, Emily.
In addition to what you guys have shared about it being more fluid for the kids, one of the things that I saw this week that made me really excited was Gmeet added the Jamboard, and then a teacher posted to Twitter, like, I don't know how to use this, like, what is it good for? And the feed that came up underneath it of like really cool interactivity things for students to do with Jamboard, like everything from like Socratic circles to like all sorts of different pre-made boards that these teachers were just sharing freely back and forth on Twitter was really like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. People are not only being innovative and creative, but they're willingly sharing with other people to make it, easier for everyone, which I thought was really nice to see.
Can you explain Jamboard to everybody?
Yeah, so Jamboard is like a shared whiteboard in Google, and before it used to be for meetings. So you would have like everyone at their computers in a meeting, and then you could purchase a physical Jamboard and everything would appear up on that board for people to manipulate and work with, kind of like a smart board, but not that technical. But they just use it now online as an app, part of the Google Suite. And if you're an enterprise Google school, you now have access to it. And it allows you to share Post-it notes. You can write on things. So these are when you bought the board. What's showing on the screen right now is when you bought the board, but you can access all those features from the app now. It includes so there's Post-it notes. You can upload an image. You can draw on stuff. You can make multiple slides and send kids from one slide, say like, make small group work out through the slides. Just some really cool things, because everybody sees in real time what you're doing and your name appears next to it. So it's just, it's kind of like the whiteboard in Zoom, but with more tools built into it. There's the Post-it notes, and you can upload a picture. You have the circle tools. There's all sorts of fun stuff. But initially they had done it to do it with these boards for group meetings, and now it's just part of the G Suite.
Got it. That's cool. Next question.
Okay, moving to Trevor Walker from Rosamond, California. When will Mukana be ready to license? My district is starting a weekly meet to help answer tech questions for teachers, and this platform would be great to manage the Q&A.
We'll ping me. We're going to go into beta in November. So we'll handful of folks, schools and other folks that we'll work with. So we're going to let people do it, but there's some, I got to figure out some of the server issues and so on and so forth, but we're going to start letting people play with it, specifically in schools. So, so if you're interested, ping me on Discord and we'll get you into the beta. So I think it's thanks to this group, it's kind of, we've wrung out most of the little bits and pieces that needed to get wrung out. Everyone's very thoughtful input. This is probably the best alpha test we've ever had as far as figuring that out. But I think that, we want to start pushing it up and letting other people bang on it. We do want to make sure that everyone knows that we might add and subtract things, as we go based on our experience. We had this problem where we put out a basic version of the former version of this, and we put it out for free so that you could use it, because what it did, what happened before Mukana was Commenda, and Commenda still exists, but we don't use it as much right now. Commenda just scrapes out of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we're looking at Twitch, but it basically scrapes all the comments out of an event and then does what Mukana does. So the back end of Mukana was developed over years of managing really high frequency events that just scrape things out. So if you're doing a Facebook event, we can grab all the comments, sort the comments, push them into a producer role, and then push them to the host. And that was useful for a long time. The problem really is that we couldn't control the front end. And so you don't see a front end that looks like Mukana in Facebook, and so the nature of the comments inside of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter don't lend themselves. You have to separate comments from questions. That is one of the secrets, is to separate the comments from the questions. Zoom does that, but then Zoom's back end remote, control is very limited, and the way that the desktop version works, and the desktop version we haven't worked on as much right now. The reason we have to wait until November is that we are using Mukana in for some events, and Chris is going to be very busy on those events, for the next month. So I don't want to put him into a beta state when he's in that position. So that's the nature of it is the desktop version needs to be updated a little bit more and refined. But the mobile version I think is working pretty well, which is what I have to admit what I use most. So I'm watching something and I mostly just open up the mobile version and use it. But we're going to work on trying to make the desktop version more. The problem with the mobile version is, and I know there's a lot of discussion about it, is when you hide it, when you only see the chat, you don't see the questions, and then you don't respond to the questions. If people the reason that the desktop version exposes all of those and keeps them in front of you is that when you see them moving, you're more likely to interact with them. And that's the advantage of that process, is that you just have to see the interaction happening. If you put it in, we've experimented with putting them in tabs like what you see with the mobile version. And the problem is it cuts down on the interactivity of the questions. Less votes. less interaction. So that's why we attempt to figure out ways to put them, in other places. The desktop version has a little bit too much. We want to split that area down below to handle a couple different things, and it's using up too much real estate for not enough information at the moment. But I'm kind of working on that next. So, but anyway, so yeah, we're gonna spring it on the world. I know a couple of you, we've gone back and forth, and so we're gonna let some of you play with it. It'll be very limited beta at first, but if you contact me soon on Discord, I'll get you on the list, and then we'll see how it goes, and then keep on slowly expanding it out. Anyway, yeah, that's the update on Meccano there. Next question. Do we have another question?
We have questions right now. We don't have anything else in the queue.
Well, we had the one that Chris had there. So teacher. Oh no, you already had that one, right?
Right.
So okay, yeah. So. Yeah. No, so we so if you have questions about education, this is the time to do it. I think this is the first time we've run out of questions, in the project. Go ahead, Chris.
I can add a little bit to my own question about teacher morale, which is that our local high school district has moved to essentially it's all virtual school at this point. But they've moved to no synchronous virtual on Wednesdays. So basically it's a catch your breath day for teachers, and communicate with one another about what's working and what's not working for the teachers, but removing from their shoulders the responsibility of what feels like 24/7 synchronous interaction with their students on Wednesdays, and of course on weekends. So I think that's a huge potential relief for teachers who otherwise would feel like they're always on, always behind.
Yeah, our kids are doing 20-minute sessions in the morning. So they have a bunch of 20-minute sessions in the morning, and then at noon they stop, and then they have other things that they're assigned to work on online until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. But it's not synchronous at that point. So the only synchronous that happens is, I believe, it's just 9 to noon for them, and they're shorter periods. I think everybody's kind of sinking into it. I don't know if it's any better or worse than what they had before, but they seem to be getting better at it. Go ahead, Chris.
One of the things that is regrettable about the local high school district's modus operandi right now is that they're trying to duplicate the bell schedule that would have been the case with face-to-face education. So it's 6 50-minute periods or 45-minute periods all in a row, and for the teacher it's 6 sections of this quote unquote the same course all in a row. So you're trying to do what you could barely keep up with in the face-to-face world virtually. Right. And it's wrong-headed in a way. It's not sustainable. This Wednesday shift is trying to make the unsustainable more sustainable, but basically what it does is give you one sensible day out of 5.
Right.
And so my advice, of course, is that educators back away from the attempt to duplicate virtually what was barely sustainable in the face-to-face days, and instead think more like the flipped classroom, as we've said often on this show, where the synchronous connection is important, but it's important that it be briefer and that it lead to something in the form of independent project work that doesn't require leaning into a screen or tuning out.
Right. Emily?
I was going to say one of the requests, so I work for a whole county providing professional development for teachers. And one of the pushes that we're making now because the teachers understand the tech. Like before it was up to the teachers to come to our trainings, and now because they were forced into it in the spring, we're seeing a lot more of like, okay, what's the best way to do this? And so I had to have conversations with people this week about like, someone sent me an email and they were like, I need to do a 45-minute video for the students on this speech. It was a reading course that is very strict about how you have to do it. And I was like, don't do that. And she was like, no, but we have to. And I was like, yeah, but don't do that. Like break it up into smaller bits, you know, put stuff in there. And she's like, yeah, but it's a program, so I have to do it exactly that way. And it was like, everyone else, you know, feels like they can like play a little more and they're looking for those new ideas. But I think the cross-pollination sharing really needs to be emphasized more. So I created a website for my teachers where they can share stuff they're doing, and then other teachers can download it and use it and, you know, change it, edit it any way they want, a kind of little repository of lessons to get some people up and moving. But it's so funny because you get this like big sliding scale of people who are, I'm only comfortable doing it to the bell schedule exactly the way I've always done it, to other people on the other end who are like, throw it all out the window, let's redesign everything. And it's like, yeah, you know, you want to be more to that end than the like sticking to the bell schedule. And so it's been interesting. But I think for us in our district, or in our county, what's been hard is that, you know, they said the kids were going to come back September 21st. Then they pushed it to October 5th. Now some of the districts have pushed it to November. And it's not, everybody's like sitting on this like razor's edge of when are the kids coming back in the building and how do I prepare for 3 different ways of teaching? And a lot of the districts are saying, you know, you are going to live stream to the kids at home and you're going to teach to the kids in the classroom. And as you guys all know, that doesn't really work. And it's not going to be equitable for the kids at home or for the kids in the classroom. So anyway, it was interesting to see that, you know, that slide scale moving, but it's moving more to the creative side and people coming up with really interesting ways to do things that aren't traditional. I'm going to lecture at you and then I'm going to give you a worksheet and I'm going to give you manipulatives and then you're going to turn something in. So.
And the hard part is that the you know, the COVID spike will happen every single time they open the school. You know, it's you know, until there's a vaccine, until they've sorted it out, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to open the school. Okay, now we're going to close it. And to your point, it's the instability that is the problem. Like if we just said we're going to do virtual this year until next June, you know, or into, you know, we're just going to take this year and do it all virtual, and everyone just figured out how to do it. And I still think that there is both a lot of parents that are pressuring them not to do that, and I think that there's also, I still think that there's some fear of like, hey, if people actually figure this out, they're not going to come, you know, it's not going to come back, you know, and I see that with events. Event companies that we work with are terrified of that. They're terrified that if they're trying to hang on to the idea of an event because they're afraid that, and they're like, well, maybe we'll get back to 50-50, you know, which is 50-50 in the event world is hybrid. Maybe we'll get back to that hybrid, because they have all this gear, you know, sitting there you know, and they have all this infrastructure. And we were talking, and John Idelson was bringing it up of Monterey Convention Center, trying to figure out, but that's Moscone, that is LVCC, that's all these companies figuring out like, what do we do? You know, and there is plenty to do, but you have to realize that it may never come back in the same sense. Because the thing is that, you know, you look at an NAB, I absolutely guarantee if the companies put the amount of money that they put into their booths into broadcasting to their user base and serving their community, they would get, the ROI would be 10x for every single company. Anyway, Michael and then Stevie.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to the point about knowing when to come back, Berkeley in the past week said that spring 2021 will be all online. And that is great. Nice and reassuring. I think it comes for everyone at a time where higher education and kind of the semester schedule, there is definitely the week 5, 6 to 10 kind of slump as midterms get underway. And so I think right now everyone is a little bit in the I'm just exhausted right now getting this news mode. But it is, I think, helpful to everyone to kind of have that expectation going in. Of course, like this fall, there's still the contingency planning for if things change rapidly. You know, some people could potentially come back to campus and whatnot, but it has been reassuring to see people trying to make plans further out and just give people the confidence to have a decision and go with it.
Evie?
Yeah, just to add to what you guys are saying here, you know, for most of us as educators, we recognize that there's a level of differentiation that needs to take place. So in this new space, you know, as we think about going back, one of the things that we've been trying to push a lot of is that what we're doing doesn't go away. It's married and, you know, put into the offerings that we can give to our students. So instead of it just being, hey, you sit in the classroom, because I know for me, and I mentioned this the first week we were on, I was on with you guys, that for me, it wasn't until I got to learn at the side of an engine that education really took off for me, because moving into that project base, learning with a jet engine there, now I'm like, oh, that's what you mean by this concept. That's what you mean by that. So for me, that was really, really important. For other students, no, they needed to sit in the classroom. And we're noticing that as well. We have some kids that the online model and the way it's being done may not necessarily jive with how they think, but there's a big group that remained dormant for so long that this is helping. I'm able to jump in and talk to a teacher when I need to. I'm able to show my skills and talents. I'm able to do all this other stuff. And even for the teachers as well, you know, speaking of investment, return on investment, a lot of us have gone in and built these studios and added computers and all this other stuff. And it feels kind of strange to go back into the room and realize, wait, I don't have 2 mics. I don't have this. I don't have that. And how do I now produce, you know, these production level things that have to go out each week, you know, recordings for my students so they can do asynchronous learning, but I'm on a laptop, you know, with a little touchpad, you know, this is just not, you know, conducive to the workflow. So.
Yep. No, absolutely. John Middleton. Did you have something?
Not just correct, but I was going to say, Alex, that the response to the question for the convention center was very well received. You know, it was a little bit like, did you have to pay for that consulting? I said, no, you only pay if you don't listen.
Very good.
Great response.
Go ahead, Tony.
I know that, you know, we've been talking about this for a while, and from the standpoint that that the hybrid is really not effective long term. But I was just wondering if those teachers who have gone all in, like Stevie had just mentioned, in terms of being able to really do this fantastic, you know, audio, video production, you know, from home with their students, have they thought about how they might be able to actually integrate that into the classroom setting, and if they had any ideas about how that would look?
The hardest part with a lot of the integration in general is that when you're trying to make sure that people can see you and hear you in the classroom and see all those things, you add this huge level of complexity to the process. Whereas there's lots of things that we can hack away in our computer and our laptop and our phone and everything else that we can show you, but we're looking down at it. And that's what I found when I was trying to teach hybrid classes. I mean, my opinion about hybrid classes isn't from the fact that I didn't do it. It's that I tried it for a decade. Like, I tried to figure it out, and we did it for corporate clients. We did it for education clients. I did it for my own schools. I did it for all kinds of things, trying to make that work. And it just, and so when my level of sureness is that I'm pretty good at figuring things out, and I couldn't figure that one out. Like, it, you know, like, it doesn't, anybody who says it works is lying to themselves. Lying. Like, you know, it does not work. Like, it is for the folks on, maybe it feels good for the people in the classroom. For the folks online, it is boring, you know, and hard to watch. And if you make it good for them, it's really hard to make it good for the folks that are in the room, you know. And so it's just that you're serving two very, very different audiences, you know, and it's why I almost completely stopped showing up at events. You know, like, if I can't stream into it with the system that I use for that, I won't go, because it's you know, because I can do it so much better on my own. Go ahead. Oh, we got a whole bunch of people here now. Michael, Emily, Chris, Bruce.
Yeah, I think the question is, if we're talking about what to adapt in, a future in-person classroom, and I think Alex is right that the whether it's hybrid or fully in person makes a difference. But the thing that I think a lot of people are hopefully taking away is just the idea that if we have given students and teachers hopefully as much flexibility as possible out of necessity, and recognizing that everyone's situations are even more vastly different than they would normally be. And so I think the thing that I'm hoping we can take away is that when we go back, we will have all these now pre-recorded resources that we can deploy as additional resources, but also just that we can lean into some sort of asynchronous method. So not every session needs to be quite as long or quite as intense, or that we can do an actual flipped classroom and really make use of the in-person time and make it as high fidelity as we have wanted it to be. And now hopefully everyone will have that experience where it's not quite as foreign to them.
Go to Emily.
I was just going to comment on the setting up if it does go to the hybrid model. And we were playing around with it the other day in a classroom. And the only way that it really worked was to have the kids in the classroom, have their Chromebooks out, participating in the Zoom with the teacher in the classroom and the kids at home and the teacher teaching to the computer. And we were like, then what's the point exactly? The other thing that's a little bit of a downside is that the districts didn't invest in high quality. Everybody was scrambling for whatever they could get their hands on. So like the quality of the mics that come, we all know what they sound like inside the webcams. And then not having the ability to plug a Pile mic into it or be able to change up their system because of lockdowns on certain, like the USB ports in one of my schools are shut down to the teachers. So they can't even add their own devices for that kind of thing. So that's all really frustrating, but I think I like looking forward to the future, like all of these, where we return to some sort of normal where kids are with a teacher. And some of those things that I see are like being able to incorporate, more individual projects with students because they will be more attuned to being able to, I can go to a website and know how to get to where I need to go. I know how to do Google research. I can, go off on my own and use the teacher more as a resource instead of the person who's directing my learning, which I think we all talk about, but I don't think ever really comes to fruition in a real way, except for like one-offs. Like I don't see it consistently replicated. And I'm hoping that going forward, that's one of the things that we get from this is that added independence and differentiation.
Yep, go ahead, Chris.
I want to remind us of a 600 to 700-year-old model that Kev is familiar with, I'm sure, the Oxford-Cambridge model that I think could be adapted to not only to higher education where it was developed, but also to secondary education in the US, amplified and adapted to take account of our virtual capabilities. The Oxford-Cambridge model basically is a tutorial model where you meet with your tutor in a small group once a week and have a discussion about what you've been reading and thinking and writing since last we met, and another discussion about what you're going to read, think, and write for the next week before we meet again. And
Right.
that's, a variation on that theme, which actually works, is I think one of the interim directions in which we're headed. So it's not going to be all virtual. It's not going to be all master classes. It's going to involve a tutor, somebody who you have a relationship with, who lives in your community and is connected, but is not walking you through some curriculum for 5 hours a week on a treadmill that really isn't working and engaging. It's got to involve letting go of control, which was what Emily was referring to, which is very hard for a community of educators who are used to being controlled and held accountable and lockstepping through a curriculum that,
I think
the
that
school board approved and spent millions of dollars to get access to. It's got to be much more learner-centered education.
Well, and I'm going to argue that school hasn't worked for a long time. like, you know, I did it 35 years ago, and you know, what I ended up succeeding with are things that I did by ignoring everything at school. Like, just be clear, like I just ignored school so that I could do the thing that I wanted to do. And then I ended up using that to get a lot of work, you know? And so the thing is that the model of these 50-minute classrooms and sitting there being droned on, you know, and having the handful of teachers that could get someone's attention. But the thing is the whole model, you know, wasn't working before. It's just that it's really not working now, you know, and I think that you know, this is an opportunity to get back to what Emily was talking about. It's an opportunity for people to experiment, you know, like, you know, this is the first time we've experimented with education in 100 years, you know, and I think that that's the, you know, the opportunity right now is to kind of break that up. I strongly believe that the cat is out of the bag. You know, like, you know, Pandora's box has been opened. And I think that, you know, we're never going to go back to what it was before. And if the public schools don't adjust to that, they won't exist in 20 years, you know, because the technology to do this online is now, it was very, very rough before. In a year, it's not going to be rough. You know, it's going to be moving really fast, you know, and, you know, so I think that, you know, public schools need to really, and I think they can, and people like Emily pushing them forward, and Michael and you know, everyone else here that's pushing, Stevie, that is pushing this thing forward, but it has to move forward. You know, the public school system has to move forward right now, and they can't keep on figuring out how they're going to go back, because there is no back to go to. Like, that is destruction. You know, like, it literally is the end of the public school system, is to try to go in a year. If they try to go back to the physical school system, the problem is that the crack has been opened, and things are going to come out through it that are going to end public school as we know it if public school doesn't adjust. Bruce? Then we're going to move on because we got a bunch of questions now. We didn't have any questions. Now we've got too many.
Filled up and it's active. A lot of voting going on.
That's my lesson for not saying it often. I get into the thing like I don't want to bother people about asking questions. Yeah, exactly.
I find myself thoroughly in agreement with you, Alex. The one dimension that still puzzles me and still has to be dealt with is the function of schooling as an opportunity to keep the kids away from the working parents. What do you do with those children? So the school system, it seems to me, serves a major social function, and education has been the technique we have used to make it really worthwhile. But there are other things that those kids could be doing. Another kind of model, it seems to me, is the apprenticeship model that a lot of young kids could be in, a social service model that we could think of. So I think we do have an opportunity now, not just to think of changes within the school, although there are some real interesting possibilities we've discussed here. I think when Emily talked about having the kids in the hybrid classroom on computers, so that the situation to the student and faculty member is essentially the same, regardless of where the physical location of the student is one good idea. Another that had occurred to me was switching the location of the classroom in which the physically present students are doing one kind of thing, such as being in a separate group doing their own projects, while the teacher in that same room is actually teaching to another entire group, another entire class. It's kind of a crazy mix, which would be hard to keep track of, but the opportunity to explore, I think, it should be extended enormously. And the social function of school still has to be met.
I don't, yeah, but I think we need to think about separating the babysitting part and the schooling part, you know, and decide, okay, we're going to solve I'm not saying we shouldn't solve the babysitting part. I mean, parents are doing what they need to do, what they need to do. So we need to figure out the babysitting part. But I think I think the reason that all this chaos has been created is because we somehow decided schools were going to be the babysitters for the day, you know, and so if that wasn't the case, we would have just gone to virtual. You know, if it wasn't, I think that, you know, we would have just gone to virtual. If we had some other way to take care of kids during the day, we wouldn't be doing the crazy gymnastics that we're doing right now, because parents are trying to, figure that out. Anyway, let's go to the next. We're going to start buzzing through questions because we got 9 minutes left and almost as many questions. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. Perry Miller asks, if using an iPhone to create video for a variety of educational purposes, please provide some inexpensive gear recommendations that will assist in production.
I would say the first one I would get is a Joby little tripod. It's got the articulating arms, and it just means you can put the camera anywhere. You can attach it to things, and you can attach it to to anything you can grab onto. And there's ones with little magnets on them that work remarkably well. That'll just snap onto metal. There's a Michael's got one. That's probably the first thing. If I was going to buy something, the first thing I would buy is that. The second thing I'd probably buy is maybe not this. I mean, this one's a really nice one. But this is a little Nan light, a little light that you can just add a little light somewhere. So there's lots of little versions of this. This one is a Lido Light SC that they sent me to test. But this is Nan light, but there's a lot of these little lights, but having a little light there is good. And Michael's showing those are really, that one's a little bit more expensive, but there's lots of these little mounts that you get for your, so you need a mount for your phone that'll grab onto it, like what Michael's showing, a Joby that'll screw into that. Yep. And then a little light that helps you just have something that's portable, maybe 2 Jobys with these, because these all have little quarter 20s on them that you can use. And that will take you a long way. That and your AirPods, will take you a long way as far as basic education models. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, grab the Filmic Pro app also right away.
Yeah, that's going to give you a lot more control over your camera. Absolutely, Tony.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Filmic Pro. I also have an inexpensive tripod too, and I think it was $15. And you can maneuver the legs too and bend them, and
so similar. Absolutely similar. But having articulated legs, it's great because you can use it as a regular tripod, but you can very quickly wrap it around something to get things, and it's just super useful. All right, it's a good start. Next question.
Tucker Dragoo from the panel earlier. Hi, Tucker, said you have all talked a lot about the downside of trying to make the online learning mimic the classroom. What do you think it would look like if we made the classroom mimic the current best practice of online? Note this would be fully in-person, not hybrid.
Well, I think the problem with that is that doesn't, you'd end up having people just doing a bunch of stuff on their computer, in the classroom. I mean, the thing is that, when I look at things that we'll be experimenting with once I get out of the production that I'm in right now, is the components that I've talked about in the past, which is movies, games, discussions, and projects. The games is a little harder, but the movies, and if you think about it, I want to show you a movie about the subject matter fast and, really quick about how to do something. We've been playing with that with our little how to make coffee tutorials, but you want to show as much information and pack it into as a small box as possible to get people off the ground. Then, in my opinion, you want to then challenge them to go do something, and then you have discussion about it. I have moved classrooms, online. I mean, they're in a physical classroom, but I'm coming in. This is when we were doing stuff in Rwanda. I'm teaching from California in Rwanda, but what I do is I make a little video about how to do something. Then I send it to them. We talk about it a little bit. Then over the week, they put it together. They post them all. Then the next classroom, we spend the first half of the class going through what everyone did. Not every single video, but the best ones, the worst ones, what were challenges. We discuss what they were stuck with. There's discussion online in between of like, I don't understand where this button is. And they all kind of, and the thing is that they all get to the other end really understanding it, because we talk about all the bits and pieces around it, so the discussion kind of covers all of that. But the key is it's mixing those formats together is the part that, I think, I've found worked really well over the last decade, is to get all of those pieces together. It's not just the video. So it's not LinkedIn Learning by itself or lynda.com. It's not just challenges without the video with little text things. And it's not just discussion. It's all, you got to mix all those things together so that people have, they have enough that they can get off the ground. Go ahead, Michael, and then Stevie.
Yeah, I think the question earlier, we kind of talked about this a little bit with something like flipping a classroom. The other thing that I'd say is if you went from a mode of not using something like small group discussions in a physical room to now having to use breakout rooms in Zoom because you just can't have a larger discussion as easily, those are the things that I really hope we'll take away, which is figuring out how to really keep those, not cohorts of 30 students in a class, but really, 4 or 5 or 6 or even 3 or something, and having those groups be things that we take advantage of when we're in a room, and adapting that.
I think that one of the things that I've been really thinking about as we look at this is also having those groups be something that occur between the classrooms, so I'm, like when you look at Discord, and I'm slowly opening that up, inside of our Discord, but the idea is that you can have people working on challenges and then get together as a cohort. Like the 5 of us are going to get together and work on this and together, just leave the video open and work on it and talk to each other. But during the classroom, let that scale up, because again, as a person who runs these classes, a lot of classes, I find that the 150 to 250 people is the magic number where you get lots of questions, you get everything. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have smaller numbers that get together and talk amongst themselves and even with the teacher, but the reality is that there's 80% overlap on what people don't understand. So if you answer it once, you're answering it for as many people as possible, and then you can apply more resources to that. Go ahead, Emily, and then Stevie.
Stevie was before me, but
Okay.
I was just going to say that have you guys seen High Tech High out in California with their stuff and that they're doing with like the project-based learning? And like Stevie went there, they came to us to train us in New York. And some of it was like, oh, that's great, we can replicate that. And other parts of it were like, our day is too structured and we can't replicate some of those longer term projects and ideas. But I think like ultimately being able to take some of the smaller group learning and allowing students to explore more based around content, and really allowing time for the social studies teacher to actually work with the English teacher and the science teacher to create a project that encompasses all of the learning goals for all of those subject areas instead of siloing them in the schools, I think is really where we need to go. And I think some people are doing that in the remote world, but like if we were able to take the tools like breakout rooms and discussions and videos and things like that and use them in that project, even if we're still stuck in the bell schedule, we might be able to make it work now more fluidly than we would have when we got trained 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Stevie?
Yeah,
And then
no,
Roscoe.
just to add to what Emily's saying as well. Yeah, the idea of the silo in the classroom, I think, is one of the hardest things to break, where I, as a math teacher, I'm not talking to the science teacher, I'm not talking to the social studies teacher, where we can bring all of our students together into one common space to get things done. But we say a lot of this in education, oh, the best practices, the best practices, the best practices. But given time, the best practices become the old practices. And if we're not able to adapt and change and adjust to our students, no matter what, whether we're online, in school, offline, on a beach, the teachers that really, engage and have a good time with their students, the best practice is being adaptable for my students. What do they need? So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm, on a computer or not on a computer, if I'm not listening to my students, if I'm not hearing what they need, because this year it might be this, next year it might be something different. And if we're not able to do that in a whole as education, we're going to lose our students no matter, what grade level, age level, wherever they're at. So I think that's where we need to focus on too. Go ahead, sir.
Round of applause for Stevie. Come on. That was gorgeous.
Yeah. And the great thing right now is that we to engage in that agile process, we have this is the one moment we get to do that, where we get kind of a pass. Like no matter what happens with students, no one's going to look back at this year and hold students accountable to what their grades were or whatever it is. We've never had an opportunity. Literally in our lifetime, we've never had an opportunity to experiment. And what's amazing is how little experimentation is going on, where there, people are trying to figure out how to keep it and how to keep that performance there. And you've got, parents like, for me, I know my kids are 11 and 12, if they have a bad year and didn't learn that much, it's not going to be the end of their life. You know, it just isn't, you know, like if it took them another year to go to college, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't, like it's not, you know, like in all these, we have some parents, and we're in Marin, people are very intense about things. And so they're very worried about the lost year. And I'm just kind of like, you know, my son's learning how to print. My daughter's getting really good at playing the bass and the piano at the same time. And I'm good with that. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then back to Emily.
I'll let Emily go first because I think go ahead, Emily.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I am really offended by the lost year terminology, that students are going to be, you know, this is the last year of these kids, and that, you know, they're going to be behind, and they're going to be this, and they're going to be that. And, you know, the lost COVID kids, I think, was the last article I read. And I was just like, we don't know what that effect is going to have. And maybe when, you know, we get over the hump of, you know, the like, hey, we got thrown into this, let's make it work.
Right.
Once we get past that, maybe we'll make better games. Like maybe there'll be more innovation and learning. And I just think that it's interesting that, you know, there's this prequel of like, oh my God, these kids are going to be lost. And I'm like, but we don't know that. We do know summer slide. There is the, you know, like over the summer kids do regress, but not so much at the upper levels, more the elementary levels. So we can address some of those things, but like this whole idea of like already naming it and saying that it's going to be this big catastrophe before it's even played out, you know, 6 months into an actual school year, like blows my mind.
Yeah, good. Roscoe, and then John.
Yeah,
and then
Steve,
Michael.
if I can ask you real quick, how competitive was High Tech High? And if you haven't seen the documentary, ping me and I'll set you up.
Well, from what I saw, it was awesome to see they had some competitions going on, things like that. But at the end of the day, it was really what I was telling a few teachers this week. The culture of the building and the culture of the space was different. So when we brought up things to some of the students too, it wasn't just the teachers. What really got me was that the students got it. And I was telling some teachers this week, we're currently shifting our culture. And it's one thing to shift curriculum, but it's another thing to shift culture. Once you start thinking about how we interact, how we do things in our spaces, it's a big change for most people. So once we get past that hurdle of now this is our culture, the conversation shift. So the students, when you go in there, I remember having a conversation with one of the kids. I said, hey, what do you do when there's a fight? She looked at me like, a what? An altercation? We have a group meeting on it. I was like, what is this, kid?
Intellectual. So real quick, are you guys familiar with Science Olympiad, which is truly a competition? I mean, they give you really pointed questions. And then to see these kids all go to the internet and work in groups and try to answer these very complicated questions. Oftentimes, this is a place where parents come in because they have expertise and they interface with the kids. So if you haven't checked out Science Olympiad, it's a great model from how we can, you know, it's currently going on in certain public schools, but not all.
That's cool. That's cool. Very cool. Michael?
Yeah, I was going to just agree with Emily on the lost year as well, especially on, you know, what we don't know is what's the effect of a classroom versus the rest of 2020 that's going on. And you know, the whole experience of being a student. And I mean, I think the one thing kind of just in terms of what's, you know, what we do know is really lost, and not lost in terms of effects, but just the interaction with other students. And I hope that the thing that we keep iterating on is how to better structure, you know, those interactions both inside and outside of the classroom, and giving students the tools to really, you know, work together and meet new people. And so the stuff that I'm seeing that I hope will continue forward is the encouraging work on just building better student groups and helping us scaffold those relationships.
Absolutely. John?
Yeah, I'm not sure I really like this concept of loss, but working with some of our teacher ed credentialing students, there are students who are actually lost. A large percent are not showing up. There are students who are not getting meals. That is lost. We have special needs students that are lost. We don't see them. We don't know how to reach them. So I'm less about, well, you know, as students in Marin who's saying this is a bad year. I agree with you, Alex. They may be overprotective, and you know, even a bad
admittedly, you know, I always listen through the filter of, you know, Marin is a county of Karens, so it's just, you know, you just kind of shrug.
But we do have a serious problem, particularly in California, with a larger percentage that I think is good for society that children are in fact lost. Special needs students probably the most needy in terms of being found and helped.
Yeah, yeah. No, good, very good point. Go ahead, Guy, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, on the opposite side of that, I have a special needs daughter. I adopted a kid, and I'm seeing the opposite up here. I'm seeing almost an over abundance of education for her, as far as she's getting on the bus. She's going a couple hours a day. When I watch her Zoom calls, there's multiple teachers that are watching what she's doing, taking notes. So she's got like a 3-on-1 ratio on the breakout room. She's getting multiple. So there is an abundance for certain
And
schools.
I think that's part of the promise of this, because, that's great to see that happening. And there could be even more of that. Where it works, it's working well. But in California, we're not doing that well, Guy.
Yep. It is the best of the district. So what they did is they took these kids and they moved them to just one school in the district. So they took like 10 elementary schools and they just put them in one. So it is highly concentrated.
Right. Yeah, Stevie?
I was just going to add to what Guy was saying. What I'm really appreciative of is our district leaders here. They actually took the data and started seeing, well, where are the holes? And they're actively looking for ways to, drive over and drop off stuff for those students. That percentile that was lost was also lost in the building, but now the data like redlines it. It says, no, you have not dealt with this group at all. Now there's no avoiding it in some cases where you're saying, okay, no, we've got to go figure out what's going on there. And it really is up to the leadership in these districts and in our districts to say, you know what, we're not going to allow it anymore. And this is how we're going to fix it. And sometimes it means, driving your car over to those students and saying, what do you need? But, it takes that foresight.
No, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
So we're moving on to Guy Cochran's question. What do you think of Chromebook's new feature update in Zoom and commands like limit camera capture to 320 by 240 and limit camera capture to 10 frames per second?
I think Google is holding the entire education system back. It's my opinion. This constant attack of lowest common denominator is really annoying. That's all. Like we're going to keep on giving you features. We're going to keep on, giving you bland gruel of stuff is just, I understand it. Like they can do that. It's just, I think the Chromebooks are, evil. I just think that they, everybody capitulated to Chromebooks because, there was some launch issues with iPads, but I think we'd be in an entirely different place if we were using iPads instead of, Chrome poop. Anyway, go ahead, John Edelson.
Yeah, I mean, you have to meet the schools where they are. I think it was nice that they realized what was the level of capability there. Zoom, which wants to be friendly and have the highest video quality, realized that there were machines that it normally would say, you can't do it. And they really felt that had to happen, I think. So,
no, I understand. It's fine. It's just, I think every time I see Chromebook related to education, I'm just like, it's a lost decade, of development, to have uncreative, written by programmers with no imagination, and people doing, how can we build a cheap box that doesn't really do anything useful? And the only thing that I strongly believe that what's about to happen in general is the creative class. People need to know how to build things, make things, and it's not going to be, like real, like not real things, like the mind. What I find right now is we're in this we're going to teach everybody all these things, but they don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to do anything with it. And I think that they have to figure out, whether it's art and music. The funny thing is all the things we took out of school, art, music, shop class, all those things, they are problem solving and you have to work hard to get good at something, and you have to figure out how to problem solve. And those are the things that matter in life, is to learn how to work, to practice. My kids will, if I just say, they'd say, well, I'm working on this. I said, how do we get better at it? And they'll all go practice, and for me, literally every time I cut an onion, I'm trying to improve my skill set, and so the thing is that making things makes us better at what we do at many, many things, and not just the acquisition of knowledge. And so I think that we've suddenly, because we can test for it, we do that. But Chromebooks get us down to the acquisition of lots of knowledge that we'll probably never use again. And the creative, being able to program, do art, make things, cook, those are the things that will benefit us for a lifetime. Chris and then Kev.
I just wanted to add a grace note to your soliloquy, which is making things in a group, in a team, is also really key.
Incredible.
It's not just about individualizing. And I think individualizing is one of the roots of evil that we're struggling to overthrow, and that a project
that's why we
needs a team.
The most powerful thing we did in the Pixel Corps a decade ago or 15 years ago was we had teams, and we had 27 teams. We had almost 300 people in those teams, and they're all working together. And then we started integrating the teams together, and you have these giant things going on. And they have to learn how to interact with each other and learn all the quabbles and learn how to be accountable and learn how to communicate. And, all those things were, and the secret was that I didn't tell them at the time, was that the most important part was the teamwork, not the actual outcome. But we didn't say that because then they'd spend too much time thinking about it. Kev?
It's all right. You've already addressed it, Alex. I use my time.
Okay. All right. Next question.
So Margot Waddell has a couple in here. The first one is, I will be presenting next week for about 100 teachers. I need an affordable headset with mic that when I move and turn my head from the laptop, my voice does not drop. Affordable options.
A Pulson from B&H. If someone puts the link into the Makana, the Pulson from B&H is, I think, $10. It is. I don't think this is the one. I had it on there.
Looks like
this is it.
John Preto has one on screen.
Yeah, check it's available.
There it is. This is what it looks like here. Yep. And this is John had one. This is the Pulson. It's $10. $10, and it will increase the quality of your audio dramatically. The one thing you want to think about with it is getting a USB extension. So you need the Pulson, and then you need something that looks like, let's see if I have one sitting here. You need a US, and Margot, you have my email, so we'll sort that out. So, the Pulson, you need, there we go. TechRise, USB to analog converter. Oh, Chris has it too, and Chris is even local to you. That's a Sabrent. You want to extend that USB to the computer. Don't try to get an extension for the headset, because it's a short cable. This cable's only like 3 feet. The cable's only 3 feet long, and so anyway, you want to extend that USB, get a 3-foot extension, and then put there you go. There's Chris's. So you have a 3-foot extension or 6-foot extension into that little converter that converts the analog to the analog headset to USB, and that's going to improve it. You'll still need an earpiece, and you can use your headphones, or you can use an IFB. There's lots of different ones that are available there, so that you can, any kind of little headset. I use one that's a little bit more expensive, but you can get them for $30 or $40 for the IFBs, and Chris is using his headset, and that works just great. So, but the Pulson is good. We used to recommend the Pile, but after recommending it, we sold them out. so I made the mistake of putting it on Twitter, talking about it here. I think it got put into some recommendations for some school systems, and before we knew it, they were all gone. So I think that the Piles are supposed to come back into stock, and we're hoping that the Pulsons don't get sold out too. So, but anyway, that'd be our recommendation for an inexpensive headset. Next question.
Alex moves.
Go ahead, Chris.
Alex moves markets.
The vertical that follows me on Twitter is the kind of folks that would buy that kind of thing. So it happens to be in the right mix. So, and then obviously everyone here, a lot of people, like Emily represents, how many teachers do you work with, Emily? How many teachers are you accountable for?
Over the summer, 1,500.
Yeah. So 1,500, teachers. And then we had, there's other folks that have been here before that are accountable for 700 and 2,000. And so, any handful of recommendations that show up on places can magnify very quickly. Anyway, so I'm careful. Like I had to buy buy a bunch of the Polsons before talking about it. And I didn't buy enough. Shannon was already very upset with me that I mentioned it online because they're impossible to find. I mean, that's the only one right now that's available in the world, Roscoe.
Yeah, and if you can, I put in the last link is that really long Ethernet cable. So if you're on Wi-Fi, try and get off that if you can.
Yeah, Wi-Fi, Ethernet will make a big difference. Next question.
So Margot's second part of that was, I think I remember Alex saying once that an iPhone 8 is good enough for using as a good bump up from a laptop camera. Does that still hold true?
Yep. I mean, if you're shooting stuff, yeah, absolutely. If you're just shooting records and so on and so forth, I mean, you can use it. But the iPhone 8 is where they really jumped. iPhone 7 and iPhone 8 was a big jump. Definitely, they get significantly better every update. Apple kind of turned a corner a couple of years ago where they just decided that the reason people upgrade their phone, this is what happened, is they realized the reason people upgrade their phone is for the camera. And so that is the reason. Everybody can, the interface is the same, the software is the same, the almost everything else is the same. The only thing that changes in a camera that drives upgrades is the camera. And as a result, a couple of years ago, I think they had it on 60 Minutes, there was 200 engineers at Apple that only work on the camera and the stuff. And that was 5 years ago. I'm sure that it's probably closer to 1,000 now so just imagine 1,000 people only working on one thing. so those cameras the cameras on all these iPhones get better and better and better because there's so much focus on it because it is the driver for upgrades. So, but the 8 is where I feel like they really jumped. Obviously, if you have an 11 or a 10 or whatever, it's significantly better than the 8. But the 8, I think, is where it kind of crossed the line into a different zone. Hosmuk and then John.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex. I wouldn't go below 8 because a 7 is really not such a big camera.
John?
I have a friend who works in that division. They don't even call it the camera. It's now the camera package.
Camera package,
really
right?
Cameras.
There's a bunch of cameras and there's LiDAR and there's, all these other things that are all packaged up together. Yeah, absolutely. Last question.
Okay, we're moving on. This Trevor Walker. Has anyone found a hybrid model that is able to be managed by a teacher successfully? I know some on the panel have left it as have felt it is too much.
It's too much. It's too much. And I've done it where I'm doing it where we have gear in the back with a crew and it doesn't work. I have like 3 people in the back with $50,000 of hardware and the hybrid model doesn't work. That's why I'm so salty about it, is that and I just feel these poor teachers, have to try to do this on their own. It's crazy. It's crazy. John and then Michael and Roscoe.
This really isn't a true hybrid, but there's some value of having other people on the stage with the teacher. So if you don't think of the people in the classroom as the hybrid class, but they're part of the production,
so
then we've had some success.
100% agree with you. Like, this is a version of a hybrid model in a certain sense that, so we have that, and what we do to adjust for that is that we greatly focus on the unified Q&A system. So the panelists, what we used to do, what we learned not to do here is that the panelists don't ask questions directly, right? Unless we're, all of you still need to ask questions in Makana. You're not allowed to just ask random questions. We did that at the beginning. So that wasn't something that was an adjustment that we made here, was realizing that the folks that were in the webinar were being left out, and so they were, at first we brought everybody in. So everybody got brought into the webinar, and then we had some security issues, some Zoom bombs. But also we realized that there were a huge number of people leaving their cameras off. They didn't want to be part of that conversation. So that's why we moved to webinar, and then people put up their hands if they want to come in, and that we don't push anybody out. People decide who wants to come in. So, but what we do to include everybody is we have a chat that everyone can be chatting with each other. There's a whole set of conversations that are going on. They're at least as good as the panel oftentimes. And then we integrate it by everybody is on an even playing field when it comes to the Q&A. Everybody has to put questions in. everybody's still voting on those questions and so on and so forth. And we do that specifically to pull the audience, the online audience, so the non-panelist audience into the conversation. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, the one thing that I'd say about hybrid, and to John's point about what you count as what counts as hybrid and what doesn't, in higher education, some people have had success with completely remote, large courses, but small groups in person. And at a campus level, that's really up to how they manage their COVID policies, at least right now. But what I think also does make a difference is when students have local student groups, even that are not formally part of a class, they have their group that they can hopefully be safe with and communicate. And so in a lot of ways, this is a remote course experience, but in person or semi-in-person, study groups. And that's made a difference from some students. And it doesn't have to be all local. I have some students that are international students, but they have a local group over there as well. And just having that connection for a certain group of students really does make a difference for them.
Yeah, got it. Kai?
Yeah, I've been watching these guys, excuse me, over at Creative Live. They are live right now. And so they've got a couple people in the audience, and they're doing a hybrid where, we're watching, and they've got thousands of classes that they've done like this. And so it works for them. I mean, this is local, right? Seattle right now. These guys are.
I think it works
live.
okay. I've watched it. I've watched it. Works for. I mean, again, it works for them. They've decided to do it that way. I don't think it's as compelling as just doing it straight to camera. I at this point would put all of you somewhere, if to do a class, because I do think that responding to people makes a difference. But I think that, again, as soon as you put people in the class, you cut your knees out when it comes to technical, the audio, the video, where you put the cameras, how you organize the whole thing, and most importantly, the teacher's attention. So what you're getting with the teacher is, like, I know this is a crutch. I just think it's old-fashioned thinking, to think that they have to have that. She's not looking at us. There's no reason for her not to look at us. Like, if you build the whole thing with a teleprompter where she's always looking at you, and again, watch TikTok. Look at everybody who has a follower of more than 10 million people, and you look at how much eye contact they make and how straight that eye contact is, and that makes a difference. That creates a connection. We just did a whole bunch of these interviews, and everything was to a teleprompter. So you're looking straight into the camera all the time, and you feel like that person in a different way afterwards than you did when they all looked off camera. You want to keep people's eyes looking as directly into the camera as possible. Go ahead, Emily.
I wish Erin was here today because she's doing in her school, I know she's in the chat, but she does the remote learning for her grade level. And then the rest of the teachers have the smaller groups of kids in the class. And I'm wondering if they're in third grade, I think, if I remember correctly. And I'm wondering if they're doing any cross class pollination, projects that bring the kids who are in person with the kids who would be in their class if they weren't doing remote only. And thinking about that kind of hybrid model, my local town school district wrote, as parents put together this letter that was really terrible the other day about how they wanted in person and they wanted the teachers to be more creative, and that online learning wasn't working. And it was really you couldn't find anything specific about what wasn't working. But I think one of the things that parents are concerned about, and rightly so, is the interaction between students that get to go in that 25% cohort or 50% cohort, and then everybody else who's remote only or hybrid on those days. And so I was just curious if anyone's experienced any of that or seen ways that they're connecting the kids in the hybrid model. I don't know if anyone has.
Yeah, I haven't. Ours are completely, they just went, they asked Marin what they wanted to do, and everyone just voted, we just want to keep them home. They didn't want to play. So the county went that direction. Go ahead, Bruce.
Mike, okay, one of the things that it seems to me makes this model, the office hours model of a hybrid approach, work, and I think it would be required, is a strong and active discussion leader. Alex, you're not exactly a shrinking violet, and I think that that's really critical to making it work. And yet your goal is not to lecture to us. It is rather to make sure that all the questions and the discussions get done. And it seems to me that a teacher in a classroom that was online, would be either online or hybrid, would have that function rather than the function of giving out information. So I think that that's one of the critical factors that makes this approach to what we would call a kind of hybrid model work, with the webinar and the people on the panel.
And the hard part is that a lot of that's a function of who has shown up for this. So when we started, if you go back to the beginning, my intention was, I'll just answer everybody's questions. You know, like I've done this for a long time, and I'll just get up here and I'll just answer questions. And what was fortunate for me was that a lot of really smart people showed up relatively early and started answering the questions at least as well as I did, you know, and oftentimes better. And now what we've developed is a panel where everybody here has this unique background that overlaps just enough that we all get along and we all see something that we're talking about. But everybody's got these incredible knowledge bases. And what I do is just glue it together. You know, so, you know, what I try to do is I try to fill in the gaps. I have a broad enough knowledge that I can make sure that almost every question gets answered. So I try to, like, for our panelists, if someone raises their hand, I'll generally try to throw it to them first. I only vamp until then if I vamp and no one raises their hand, I go, okay, we're to the next question. But if you see me talking for a while, oftentimes it's either something I'm super passionate about, or I'm just waiting for people I'm just trying to hold the space until people raise their hand. You know, like, you know, and like Stevie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what you're saying. I find for some of the teachers, though, the fear is that they don't have that type of personality. And there is a different personality and presence that you have to have in this type of environment than being in a classroom, where you have my physical, you know, me walking through the classroom and touching you on the shoulder and saying those type of things, where, you know, like you even mentioned the folks that you see on TikTok or you see on, you know, YouTube. They engage their audiences through their personalities more so than the actual them being there. I watch my sons watch 4 hours of live stream video games, but 30 minutes into a class where the teacher is not, you know, that type of personality, I don't blame them. They kind of so. But
what I will say is that I was not that. I mean, I did some things that were publicly facing in high school, but I was definitely pretty antisocial. and so, you know, you know, I was trained to do what I do, you know, and I was on, you know, radio, and I was put through training programs to speak in front of people, hundreds of people, 30 years ago. And then I was accountable for teams to manage seminars that did that. And so I was, you know, I was ground up. You know, like my old personality was kind of ground up into little bits and pieces and then put back together into what I do now. Before, you know, and then I was in radio, and then I was in, you know, so the thing is that, but what I want to say about that is, I'm clear that what I do is and as other people who have hosted here, it's complicated, you know, to try to keep the energy flow and to kind of keep moving through things. So I will say that it's harder than it looks some of the time, but I will also say that it is trainable. Like, I'm not naturally a speaker. I am not naturally, you know, Chris has known me long enough to know that, you know, I was not the most outgoing kid in the world when I was younger. I was a little rough around the edges. I mean, most people in high school were just scared of me, you know, like they were, you know, I was the kid that if something bad had happened, they would have gone, oh, I saw that coming from a mile away. So the, you know, like I wore camouflage for 3 years straight. So anyway, so the I'm not kidding. You think I do? I mean, I'm not. So, so I think that, I think that teachers need to get that. I think that there is a new reality for teachers to learn how to do what I do, or do what you do, or do what Michael does, or Emily, to project. And I think teachers have to figure that out, because that's going to be the next generation of teacher, is being able to figure this out. Go ahead, Stevie, and then Michael.
Yeah, just to follow up. Yeah, I find that now that they're in this space, and I told them that a lot, you know, it's like being a new teacher in the classroom. You run to that, you know, my first few days in school book, and you read it over Harry Wong like 30 times to try to get the feeling right. But we are starting to see, you know, that dynamic shift that takes place, that, okay, this is how I engage in that space. And I think that's what makes educators the great people that they are, is that they do make that transition. But, you know, to kind of add to what you were saying, it was something that was trained. It was being in front of people on a regular basis and going through that process and seeing how this all operates. We focus a lot of our PD on getting used to the software and getting used to the curriculum, but there should be some PD alongside that on getting used to being this type of public speaker as well, and offering that to them as well.
Yep. Michael and then Chris.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing, which is, to me, the important part is that it is trainable and learnable, and that it's not
Absolutely.
all that. And just reminding people, I mean, Guy had a really good story, which is the first couple of weeks are difficult and they don't always go well, but teachers are where they are because they can learn pretty quickly and they can adapt. And so, I think part of that is also, I mean, it's especially interesting on a college campus where, some people haven't had to adapt in 30 or 40 or 50 years. And, I don't know, I haven't figured out who decides, when they can and can't, right? But there are people who they haven't done it this way for 50 years, but now they're learning how to adapt too and making a lot of success of it. And I think it is just encouraging that mindset of, you haven't done this before, but you can adapt and learn. And I'm lucky because the first real educational project I worked on was a MOOC 8 years ago. And so producing an online course and then going in the classroom and then going back online turns out to be a good training. But who knew that 8 years ago?
But I'll definitely say, if I can do it, anybody can. Go ahead, Chris, and then Hosmuk.
I want to propose that we add to the teacher education and professional development repertoire viewing old episodes of the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, because that's the kind of team and putting oneself out there that I think we're trying to imitate, cultivate, adapt to new circumstances and new audiences. It's just earlier in the day than 11 p.m.
And when we coach people, I have to coach people who are going to present for the first time on Zoom. And there's a lot of really basic, there's some, what I call ball handling skills. We've talked about this a little bit. There's just basic, we can do flea flickers and you can do crazy graphics, but there's some basic things that, getting everyone to mute their mic. And then the other thing is throw the ball to somebody. Like, just take that ball and throw it to somebody. What I don't do here is go anyone. You almost never hear me ask anyone. We have people picking up raising their hand. I'm saying go to Chris, then to Hosmuk or whatever, but I'm throwing the ball to somebody all the time, and the thing that just kills the energy of what we do. And then the willingness to make mistakes, but those are the things that you want to figure out. But a lot of those are really basic skills. And then you get over those. And then again, the best part about teaching is you get to do it every day. I mean, you get to do it over and over and over again. And if you can become self-aware that you can, at the end of every class, at the end of every one of these, I often get on a call, like with Shannon or something like that. We talk about what didn't work and what worked, and I screwed that up and this didn't work. And I send Chris a bunch of things like Makana has to do this, and so it's almost every day that we're iterating that process. Go ahead, Hosmuk.
Yeah, I think before office hours, I would have never thought I would be able to host a webinar or even hold a teaching session like a workshop or a discussion forum. And I thought about it, and I think it's the practice of being on these meetings.
Yep.
It's also the ability to be what I call dressing up for a virtual meeting, being comfortable with the technology. And I think once you've overcome all those hurdles, they don't become the impediments or the obvious issues that as a teacher you are anxious about or you worry about. So it's just going over that, and it's just practice that creates that comfort and confidence. And that's really the key, the ability to gender confidence, then to be able to understand the impact you're having on the other side of that camera.
Well, and I think that one thing that we should think about is practice, to get back to your thing. So when we did a live stream with Lincoln Park a couple months before Chester passed, and in their studio where they record on Facebook Live, and we brought in, we were gonna do it with a basic setup, because the budget wasn't very high. And then I got to their rehearsal studio. It's in Burbank, just near the airport. And I went into their rehearsal studio and realized that they had spent, this is Lincoln Park, they had spent 3 weeks rehearsing that song, the 3 songs that they're going to play. 3 weeks all day for that rehearsal. I mean, for that live stream. I didn't make any money on that show. Like I just blew it out. I got K35 lenses, and we got all this extra lighting and everything else. And I realized if those guys can put the effort in, I can put the effort in. And I'm a big Linkin Park fan, so I was pretty excited about it anyway. But the thing to realize, those are professionals. These are songs that they wrote. These are the songs they already performed a bunch of times. And they were still going to practice them over and over and over again. And I think that we forget sometimes, to Hosmuk's thing, is that practice is really important, and doing something over and over again. When you look at musicians, when you look at a great gymnast, it's a lot of practice. Like, to do something well, you don't just wing it. It is. And one of the things to remember is that practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And what I mean by that is that you want to be, kind of aware practice. It's not that I'm perfect at something, but I'm going towards that. Again, every time I make a loaf of bread or cut an onion, or, I literally watch videos on cutting onions. I don't know why I'm obsessed with cutting onions, but it's a skill set that to get it just right is not, to do it perfectly is a thing. And it's hard because they're all different. And so anyway, and the other thing is that I think teachers have to get a thick skin. One of the things in my family is people are allowed to be very critical. Like I have this mango guacamole that I make that I'm pretty proud of. And that's pretty good. And, it's better than you can get anything in a store or a restaurant. We already know that. But if I make it, my kids will immediately go, I didn't have quite enough salt, or I think we added a little too much lemon, or like they'll just dig into Dad's masterpiece. They have no problem digging into our cooking ability or anything else, because we've built a culture around that it's okay to be critical, that we're all trying to be better. We're never there, and we have to get our ego out of that system so that we can improve ourselves. And one thing to know as presenters is what really gets you is your ego, is your thing that you want to do it right, and not being willing. And it's what stopped me from doing something like this for a long time, is that I wanted to have all the gear to be right, and I wanted all the things to be right, and I wanted a great set, and I wanted all these other things. And then I just said, you know what? I'm stuck at home. Let's just turn this thing on, and the willing to, screw it up, and have things work and not work and everything else is a huge piece of it. But there's this internal conversation that goes on inside of us of trying to do it right, that and trying to against something external that really makes it hard to operate. Like it makes it because you're having two conversations at one time in your head. And you want to observe things that you could improve later, but you don't want to get caught up in them. And just know that it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be great, and you're going to keep on just getting better, iterate and dominate. Chris.
It's called action research in the business. Yep. And
Chris always gives me the technical terms for my opinions.
It should help your Google searches.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thanks. All right, everybody. We have reached the end of yet another great morning. Every morning, I get up every morning. I know it's going to be a great morning. I don't know what it's going to hold. I don't know what questions. I don't know what conversation. I just know I'm going to hang out with a bunch of great people and have a great conversation about education or media and all the other in between. So, thank you all for coming. It's just so great to see you all, especially on the Saturdays when I get to see Emily and Stevie and Bruce and Chris and Tony and everybody here. And so. And Michael and just when you guys come in for the education conversation, it's really, really great to have you here. So thank you for coming. Can't wait until next Saturday to see you all again. Come more often if you can. Go ahead, Tony, real quick.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the last bit of information that you shared reinforced me doing what I need to do. So again, I just want to say thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's really my honor to be with all of you. So anyway, so thank you. And we will see you all tomorrow morning. And for anyone who's adventurous, we'll be back here. See you tomorrow morning. And then we start a new, kind of a new set of second hours starting next week. So the announcement will go out tomorrow, but I'm pretty excited. We're going to have some good conversations. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. And thanks, Mickey, for doing this switching quietly in the background. So there we go. So yeah, we're talking about automation. We've got a great guest for the audio. We're I'm still working on Wednesday and Thursday. There's a couple of changes that got made, so we'll get through that. But it's going to be a good set of, as we start moving it, we've got some teams working on the different days, and so it should be good. All right, see everybody. Thanks.